Good evening, everyone. This is December 6, 2011. We are the Goffstown Budget Committee. We have 10 members currently in attendance. 9 at the moment is our quorum. Dick, could you start the roll call, and then we'll head towards Guy, please?
Richard Fletcher.
Guy Karen?
Elizabeth DeBrule,
Dan Cloutier.
Scott Cross.
Brian Lewis.
Lisa Jukes,
Richard Meany. Jalen Burt.
Ivan Bellamo.
And we are gathered here today to ask questions of the school budget and get answers. And the last time I spoke with the SAU is when we planned it on that Saturday. We said, okay, we would not be able to do those first Tuesday, Thursday, but we would definitely have all day, and we'll set all day Tuesday and Thursday for us. Keith was here, and he's nice enough to have gone outside to see what's up. So in the meantime, let me tell you what I sent out earlier before this meeting. Some of you may or may not have had the opportunity of grabbing it out of your emails. It's a little spreadsheet. I mentioned that I would give it a shot of trying to get descriptions in with the budgets. I appear to have been successful, although the detailed information doesn't have all the information I want it to have yet. I didn't have time to put all of the information in there, but I have all the details, which means all the subtotals aren't in there for all the items. I only put total districts. So if you have, how many of you happen to have that on your little machines right now? Okay, so the Fund 10 is the general fund. The Fund 11, or excuse me, Fund 21 is going to be the federal or the food, and 22. I just got those today when I got home from Ray. I'll go ahead and try to insert those in. I doubt I'm going to have them inserted by Thursday. I'll try to get them to you if I can do that after. But what you can do is, if you're on the paper or something, or wherever you have your notes, and you flip it and you say, you know what, I want a little more information on this line, which is Fund 10, and it is location, hit the on button, 000, and function 1100, and let's say it's item 112. When you type that in, all the data we got on the spreadsheet shows up on that one screen in different, see where I have a column for budget, actual, over or underspent, budget to actual, and then below is a big pocket for the additional information they gave you. Okay, that's on that one screen. I'm hoping that might be helpful for you guys, just to hit, you can only see one thing at a time, all right? Give me some ideas of something else you'd like to see possibly, and I'll try to accommodate. Huh?
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. And that was hopefully for questions and answers for tonight, because it gives you a one-line shot look at stuff. And that was my intent, to try to do that. One of the things I just ran out of time is to put the actual, I graded out there in 2012, the actual 2012, that's on another document we have, so you'd have to go to that other document right now. If I get a chance, because that's in a PDF format, I'd have to hand type everything. If it was electronic in like Excel or something like that, I could grab it and I could electronically merge it in. I wouldn't have to, I just have to do one. If it works, everything else comes in. So if Guy has a PDF parser,
I do, actually.
yeah, if you have one that would work and you can get it to me, I'll try to put that in. So that the 2012 actual, which would be year-to-date spent, is what it would be, could show, and we could get the other information and then could use it, although it may or may not have a lot of effect, since, the teachers started getting paid in September, October, this is November. We really are only 4 months into a 12 months, but it could give you some relation, because you keep that in mind. It can help you ask questions and get some idea of what's happening. And one more column I'll probably put in there, it would be for the BC, the Budget Committee. And so as we go on, this is what I kind of use to keep a handle on the items of motions that get done. I put them in, and that's how I track it. I also have another column I put in for the MS-27 that actually creates the MS-27, and then I bounce that against Ray, and when he and I get to the same numbers, we pretty well have a good idea that we've got it right, and we can send it off to the Department of Revenue.
Nice work.
yeah,
Thanks. Yeah, any comments, enhancements, things that you'd like to see that you don't see? Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be bold, I'm going to ask, because Keith was nice enough to go ahead and make a call, were you able to?
I got a voicemail.
Okay.
But I think they probably were literally seven and a half. So I think I'll try her again in a couple minutes.
Oh, wow, I wonder.
What about Jen? Like Jen, the budget?
Jen said she has a prior commitment that she will be attending as soon as she can.
I did get explanation regarding the software.
Oh, yeah.
Sue gave this to me last night.
Okay. No, that's great. Why don't we do that?
You want to read it?
Yeah, why don't we do that? Well, thank you. And make yourself comfortable up at the table if you want, Stacy.
Remind me, I got a comment on the sheet there.
Is that it?
So we're not anticipating.
Yeah, yes, John.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make it,
Hey, hang on for a second. I'll get the room back. Yes, John.
I just want to make it, I want to explain that I must have made a mistake last night when Jennifer came up and talked to me.
Yeah.
I was under the impression we were still going to talk about the first part of the meeting for the town.
Ah, so you were at the school board meeting last night?
Yes.
Ah.
So she asked me what happened because she was not here last week. And I said, well, we're
No,
going
it
to
starts-
take off the table, there's that, what is that,
Yeah.
$300,000 software?
Yeah,
I thought
okay.
we were going to take that off the table, so that's
I
what I
see.
relayed to her. It was an honest mistake, so I apologize to the school board for that mistake. And,
Okay.
Hopefully I'll listen better next time.
Then we're good to go. Is this a copy I can get, that I can make a copy and send to everybody?
Sure.
Did,
I think I have it electronically. I can send it to you.
if you have it electronically, it'd be good. What this is the answer to the software question on the town. But Stacy is here, so I'm gonna defer.
Okay, I'll email it to you.
You'll email it,
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah.
You want to come on up to the table, Stacy? And,
I have just a quick
Yes.
comment to answer your question earlier about your sheet.
yep,
I'd like, and I don't know how hard this is for you, because I did it last year and it was a lot of work, is that I'd like to be able to look at an account number across locations. Say, for example, teacher salaries is account number 111.
Sure.
I don't want to narrow it down by location, district by location, Glen Lake. I want to see,
you want to see the subtotal, but you want to see the individual amounts for each one.
right.
That could be another line input sheet.
Yeah. That's my comment.
Can you email that
Yep.
inquiry to me? And it's just putting in the formulas and the calculations and setting it up.
I'm gonna roll. Okay.
Okay. So let me flip this up and Mr. Kendall is in the house.
Sorry for the delay.
And you said Checker was going to be in a little late? I'm not sure where Bill Bates is. I'm not sure if he told me if he wasn't going to be here, but I know Jen and Checker are scheduled to be here, so we're cooking.
Gas.
All right. Thanks for coming, Stacy. One of the things that we started off with the town is, rather than just bombard you with questions, we said, is there anything else besides after the Saturday presentation? Is there any additional information or anything that has changed or anything that you want to?
No, I think we got all the follow-up information to the budget committee through Dan. I think you should have all gotten that. Other than that, I think everything has been the same. We continue to negotiate both contracts, so that's still up in the air.
Okay.
We have an all-day session scheduled for Thursday, so we're hoping to make some movement there. And
And that's on both? There's only two, right?
teachers and support staff.
Right. You guys had an SAU board meeting last week?
Correct.
Was the budget voted in? Or
Yep,
was
the budget was adopted as was presented.
So the numbers that are in this is the
Is the
number? Okay. Okay. And so I got a question from someone who said, hey, Dan, how are we going to do this? And I said, well, it's whatever
right in.
you want to do. I mean, the book is wide open. Ask your questions. We don't have to go page by page because we're not making any motions. We're just getting additional inquiries. So what do you got? Are we going to have to do it that way? Have you had the chance to go through and taken a peek? Richard?
I have general questions on revenues. We got the projected revenue sheet at the presentation, and I'm sure the list of revenue categories roll up a bunch of them. But I was looking at, there's something at driver education program receipts is supposed to be zero. I didn't see where things like parking fees and when we let somebody outside use the theater, the fees from that. Where can I find that information?
That would be under, in the third section where it says local revenue other than taxes and it says other income. There's a little note, if it's the same copy, it says parking, books, rentals. There's $42,000 in that line item. Do you see that?
Okay, because mine says $0 under other income.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're-
You may-
Whoops. The one we
The one you
have,
have, does it have 4 columns in it?
it has
Yeah?
Yeah.
the approved MS
And the very
20.
last column, it has other revenue at $42,000.
It doesn't have the 42.
Does not have the 42.
And you don't have the same one that I have. That's all I can say.
Cool, so we can get there might be an update. I understand, it's a moving target. So if,
This was the one that was given to the board though on November 7th. So
Ours says November 16th.
yes.
From the ALDA presentation.
In the upper left-hand corner, it says 11/16.
Let me look at
Yes.
that, let me.
Philip.
I do know, Stacy, that after the meeting, I did have a question for Ray. It really doesn't affect the far right-hand column for the proposed revenues, but I did notice some discrepancies for some reason. Don't ask me why. I had the last 3 years of these in my book. And I noticed that the 2009, 2010 approved varied from the past 3 years.
Okay.
The approved portion of it.
Yep.
And I know that he was looking at that. So
Okay,
I don't know if you have a revised one after he looked at that or not.
No, I don't. So let
Okay.
me get that back to you for Thursday, because I'm
Okay.
wondering if when he cut and pasted, some things maybe dropped off. Which
Okay.
but let me, Ray may know when he gets here. He'll be here around 7:30.
Okay.
Because we thought that was about when we were on.
Will that have or can we get some sort of listing of what other includes?
Yeah, on this sheet it has it. It has a little line next to it that tells you parking,
Okay.
rentals, and books.
Okay, I guess we need to.
But yeah, we'll get that. I pulled it up.
Floor is open for questions, guys. We're gonna go page by. Go ahead, Philip, you raise your hand.
Stacy, I apologize for not, I know you mentioned it at the presentation, but I'm not sure you mentioned the exact number. Do you know what the number is for the late buses? I know you said it was put back into the budget.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact number that was thrown out. If it was, and where I might find that. Well, I know it's in the transportation.
It's gotta be in the 2000.
26, I think. This is where I need Ray with the exact numbers.
We got a cool little spreadsheet. We actually click it in.
I have in my notes.
It's 27, 22, 511. If you have the budget, it's page 46. Oh, nope, that's special ed.
Is that all in district level, or is it
Yeah,
in every?
this is district level.
Okay.
Hold on, that's special ed.
And
Page 45, the page
so if you go to the
before
little
it.
spreadsheet and you put those numbers in there?
27, 21, 511, 000. Each late bus is the late buses are $68.45 a day. So it's
what is-
24, 642.
That's total?
Yeah, we budgeted 24,642 for the late buses.
For one late bus?
For
or
two. Goffstown uses two.
And that was $64 a day, you said?
68.45 each. Times 180 days, times 2. According to the description on 27, 21,
Yeah, I
511.
haven't opened your spreadsheet yet.
It's okay, it's really cool. Did you have a question, Elizabeth? You,
How many spreadsheets
I
they
do
send
kind
us?
of, but I was letting other people go first.
'Cause I got a
Okay.
bunch of different. We got this one, operating budget development, 12511.
And I have a bunch of questions.
So what? It would be you got the floor.
we can go for it.
All right. Well, since we talked about late buses, can we talk about late buses for a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, at the presentation, I think you said, we talked about bus capacity, but how many kids are taking the late bus?
I don't have the exact number. Each bus holds a maximum of 77 students.
Okay.
I mean, that's at full capacity.
Right, but high school kids are bigger, so they don't.
Right, I mean, we try not to put 3 on a seat at the high school level because they are bigger kids. I would say our late buses, particularly during sports seasons, are fairly full. In Goffstown, they were.
Okay, so the 2 buses and they're full, I guess, do we know what, I know that there's an athletic component to this, there's also the whole Crispin's House component to this. Do we have any sort of a idea of how many students are, I don't know if hardship cases is the right word, but I'm trying to get a sense
Have
of the
no choice.
breakdown.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, what I can tell you is I can't tell you a definitive number of how many kids aren't participating in something because they don't have a late bus, because that would be a
Right.
definitive number of something we don't have. But I can't identify something that isn't there. But what I can tell you is both the Crispin's House, and particularly our middle school, high school kids tend to, if you're doing after-school sports, you tend to, by the time junior or senior, you have a car, you have friends who have a car, you can get transportation home. What we found at our middle school, we have noticed that both for student council or student government and for Crispin's House, we had definite decrease in numbers because there was no late bus transportation. I would say the majority of Crispin's House students who stayed for that after-school program took the late bus.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to get at though is, I mean, there's a difference in my mind between paying for a late bus for a kid whose parents just, they don't have the money to do anything else with him, and paying for a late bus for a kid whose parents are a couple of executives down in Boston who are working.
Right.
And I guess I'm wondering, is there any way to separate that out and look at some sort of a
Fee to
charging
ride.
some people?
Yeah, a bus
who-
ticket.
Charging some people who could help offset those costs.
Yeah, it's not something the board has looked at. I think it would be, I mean, you'd have to really start to ask questions about why are you taking, can you afford to take the late bus? I don't know that.
Could you
that's
use like the lunch program? I mean, the lunch program already sort of sets.
Yeah,
a-
you can't, because you can't, whoever is eligible for free and reduced lunch, only there's certain limited people who have access to that knowledge. That's not public knowledge. The bus company can't know, the principal doesn't know who has that, who is free or reduced lunch. It's confidentiality.
Didn't Rick tell us for Parks and Rec though that they were using some kind of information like that to determine? Does this board remember that?
Yeah.
Well,
buried
parents
in
can
there.
self-report it.
Okay. I guess that's just what I'm getting at. I mean,
Put it
to
on
me,
your
there's a big
desktop
difference
and not
between those
pull it
two
in.
categories.
Right.
And if there are people who can afford to be, I mean, the late bus, I understand its need, but at the same time, it is kind of an extra, and I don't want to get in debate mode.
Right.
But,
I mean, I could certainly bring it to the board. I don't know how that we would manage who would pay to get on the, because the other thing is, the late bus isn't an everyday event. So a kid may take the late bus Monday and Thursday, they may take it 1 day a week, they may take it 5 days a week. It's not something that's consistent. You just sign up for the late bus during the day, and then you take the late bus. Like at the high school, they don't even sign up, so they just get on the bus.
well, but you could work out some sort of a fee schedule.
Yeah, I mean, if everybody was gonna pay.
Okay. Okay. So we're talking about late buses and that they did have an impact. All right. Does anybody else have questions about late buses?
Well, I do. The late bus is there every day. It's just kids may not take it every day, is what you're saying.
Right, the
Same
late
kids may
bus.
not take it every day.
Exactly.
The ability, the bus is there every day,
Yep.
whether it has one student on it or 70 students.
Correct, we have 2 late buses, they start at the high school and then they go to Mountain View and then they deliver kids.
So those buses essentially run the necessary routes to get all the kids home. So
Yeah,
they're
there's-
running more than the normal.
No, they actually
bus
have
route or
stop
bus route.
spots. So
Okay.
like in the Bartlett side of town, there's 2 or 3 locations they stop, so they don't, in Goffstown, it tends to be because of the locations of houses, it tends to be a lot more door to door on this side of town.
Okay.
But there's supposed to be designated spots, that they stop in, so there's, maybe a dozen spots that they stop in,
Okay.
that are centrally located.
Continue.
I want to make sure everybody had a chance to
Okay.
get their late buses questions out.
Everybody get their late bus question out? We can come back to it, but
I can answer them all day long.
we'll take one of the late buses and you can ask your question again.
I'm not trying to monopolize this either. I'm
I was,
happy to
I
ask the
was,
question and
it's
let
okay.
somebody else go.
Yeah, believe me, you're not monopolizing it. Go ahead. If I see someone else who has a question, they will pipe up.
All right, let's talk about smart boards. You guys have requested, I don't have the total, but it's 6,000 for 20, well, 100 and,
That would be 20.
6 times 20?
They said 20 of them, I believe
There's
they're,
20 of them
requesting
for
20 of them
6,000
in there.
each.
I believe it's on, yeah.
Okay.
Is there an account number on there at all?
I don't have it on this.
Okay,
I'm
so
looking at the
it's-
handout they gave me.
It's on each school, if I remember
Oh, wait, it
correctly.
is.
isn't it?
Now, it's
district
actually
level.
for the smart boards, we put them at the district level to start with. Because one
Okay.
of the things that we found last year was, we asked teachers to apply for them. Because what we wanted to do is we wanted to get the teachers who are gonna be most engaged with them and use them. Like, we didn't want them to just become fancy whiteboards, we wanted them to be used. And so we had teachers apply for them. And so instead of budgeting them, like, saying the high school's gonna get 5 and the middle school's gonna get 7, and then changing them, we budgeted 20 at the district level. We'll filter them out as we look to see who's going to get them, because we want, our ultimate goal is not that every classroom is going to have a smart board, but that every teacher who is going to engage in using a smart board and use it for their curriculum to enhance their curriculum is going to get one.
Okay. So how many do we have now in the district?
I believe we have 25.
We have 25.
I'm gonna say approximately 25, it's in that range.
And you want to buy another 20, right, according to this
Correct.
budget? So, the ones that exist, is there a cost associated with getting the smart boards for a new teacher? Is there training costs or anything?
There is some training cost, and so we've worked through this year. When we bought the smart boards last year, one of the requirements was they had to attend 2 days of training that we did over the summertime. The teachers came in on their own time. We went through Manchester Professional Development Center, which is really inexpensive. I think it's $300 a day to have the trainer come in.
So we paid for the trainer, but we
paid for the
didn't pay
trainer.
for their time.
Correct, and they came in on their own time and did workshops, did the training on the smart boards, and then about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, they actually all came back and had to demonstrate to us how they're using them and what they're using them for, and to kind of share the technology. One of our goals is to get everybody excited about the technology, but also to make sure that they are just sitting, that they are being used instructionally the right way.
That was gonna be my next question, is
Yeah.
how are you ensuring that they're
That's
actually
exactly
being
how, and
used?
we're getting in to see them. Our tech coordinator, Gary Gerolman, has been in to observe them. I've been in, Mary Claire's been in, and then they had to come to this workshop with a presentation of a sample lesson that they're using it for, so that we could see that they're using it appropriately.
Daisy, are the training costs part of the line?
Not that line, they are in the district level under the technology, there is a technology line for training.
Okay.
So, is there any sort of smart board sharing going on right now? I mean, I know that more teachers want them than have them.
Yep, we have, at Mountain View, I think we have 2 that are portable that can move, and so they do use those. We also have teachers, so like at, we tried to be, like at the elementary school, put 1 in each grade level, and so when maybe somebody's at art class, another teacher can come in and use that room. The downside is that the single mount ones they're mounted to the wall, so it does require some swapping out of classrooms, but they have done them. Because one of the things we found is that the kids get excited about them, and they're very interactive, and so once one teacher uses them, everybody wants to see, the kids get excited about it, the teachers all see what the technology can do in their classroom, and so it has become,
Do they all come with the clickers?
the clickers are extra, and they're included in the cost,
Okay.
cost, yep.
So, when you say about buying 20, are you talking about buying 20 permanent mounted or portable?
Permanent mounted. The permanent mounted ones are far superior than the portable ones.
Why?
Well, the portable ones, you have to have the LCD projectors, you have to hook up your laptop. Anytime that LCD projector moves, the whole thing has to resync itself. So what we're finding is that's why we went to the fully mounted ones, because they're just technology-wise, they're just more effective. They just work better.
The teachers who have them, do you have any any idea of how, like, how much of their day they're using them?
I don't, but I can tell you they're pretty well integrated. I
So there's any
know,
possibility, I mean, if
like,
we
I know
have the
both
space
re-
to have smartboard rooms, that people could.
yeah, see, the whole concept of a smart board is not that it's a go-to class. It's supposed to be integrated right into your curriculum. So, for example, Reading Streets and Everyday Math have actually applications using smart boards built right into their program. So you can actually download software from the Reading Streets program to use as a smart board application. So it's not something, it's not like the old computer labs where you would set up a lab and everybody went to the lab. The technology is supposed to integrate right into the curriculum. So it's not a, we're gonna do the smart board now, it's we're doing a lesson using the smart board.
Okay. I have one other question, I think, for this. Sorry.
Are you sure or not sure you have a question?
Don't be snotty to me. I guess I'm just trying to get a feeling of like how effective they are.
Yeah.
Now, they're pretty new, right? We've been having these for a year or two.
Well, these ones, we've had smart boards for a couple years. I would say,
At
I
least
think
3 or
our first
4.
ones were probably 3 or 4 years ago, we bought the first ones.
I mean, as a teacher myself, I think the part that most interests me is the clicker. And
The assessment
what that,
piece.
yeah, what that gives you. And I guess I'm wondering, do we have any information or data about how effective they are at, I know this is really hard to figure out,
Yeah.
to pinpoint, you know, if the class is doing better or worse, but do we have any sort of information that shows us that they are having an impact?
Yeah, I would say we don't have any definitive data yet because I think the teachers are just getting, the 20 teachers that just got them are getting comfortable with them. I have qualitative data that I will tell you teachers say, because particularly the assessment piece, so if you don't know, each student would get a clicker, and so the teacher can on the spot do an assessment. So the teacher can say, put a question out there, type a question into a laptop with the answers. Kids can respond, 1 through 4, A through B, whatever the response is. The teacher can, then it shows up on the screen, so, it can be a bar graph, it can be how many kids got the question right. So kids get immediate feedback on what they did, but the teacher then can, as long as she knows who has what clicker, so you assign student A clicker 1, so she knows that, she can then on her laptop pull up which kids got it wrong. So that way, as they move on, she can go back and check with that student, make sure they understood it. So I think qualitatively, I think teachers would say absolutely they are getting a benefit
Well, and the
from
class
them.
as a whole, you can.
Absolutely.
Because I mean,
Well,
as a
classes
teacher,
can get
you
the
often
immediate
say,
feedback.
does everybody understand this?
And they go,
all
oh,
look at you and go,
yeah.
and you know.
But
that
this
they
way, you
did.
absolutely 100% know which kids, and kids can't look at other kids' answers because it's an immediate response. I will also add on next Thursday at the community workshops that I'm doing, the beginning is technology, and I have 2 teachers doing smart board presentations and sample lessons. So you're all more than welcome to come
Where
to that.
is that?
It's at the high school next Thursday at 6:30.
In the step room?
We're gonna start in the step room. Gary's gonna do an overview of technology, and then we'll move to a classroom where the where smart board is. And I have an elementary teacher and a middle school teacher that are gonna demonstrate the use of the smart boards.
How many individuals can you accommodate?
Whatever our classroom holds with 30, 40. I mean, at 40 it might be standing
Well,
room.
here's what I'm trying to get to, because I don't know how many about you guys, but I'm interested in seeing this. I mean, we're talking about what, $128,000 of an
Yeah.
investment. I wouldn't mind going to the school next Thursday, but we're scheduled to be here asking more questions. So maybe towards the end of the night, if you guys wanted to convene, at least beginning over there, to see what's happening, we could schedule to do that. If,
This Thursday or next Thursday?
no, it's this week,
No,
the
it's
8th, right?
next.
It's next Thursday.
It's the 15th.
Yeah, 15th.
That might be a little more
6:30.
difficult.
At that point.
How long? does
So
that-
that's, because we're doing curriculum and we're doing some instructional pieces on Reading Streets and Everyday Math. So that piece, I think, will probably be about 45 minutes,
Beginning at 6:30.
6:30.
Works for me.
Yeah, we can talk about that, because we are gonna be getting into the budget by then, I would hope. Because we're hopefully gonna be getting towards the end. But if, maybe that's something, let's talk about that, and remind me to talk, let's talk about that before we either exit today or Thursday, see what's happening. Because it might be a good thing to do. I mean, sure, anybody who's interested in this, I mean, is that something that you're,
Yeah,
okay.
I've
I've
seen
seen
them
it, but I'd love
before,
to see
so
you
I
guys.
don't.
All right. Yeah, I've seen them on the wall.
You put it on YouTube?
Yeah, they have been coming and taping them, so GTV's been coming and taping them, they've been on. So I'm assuming that GTV will be there to tape as well, we've asked them to do that. If that doesn't happen to work out and people are really, I mean, we could schedule a night, if people are interested, to have you come over and I can have the teachers just do it tomorrow on a night that works better. As long
Well, I'm
as I
wondering
have
if
time
they,
to arrange it, but.
yeah, it only gives them, if you would mention it tomorrow, that doesn't give them a whole lot of time to do a preview pre-test of next week.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Okay.
I don't wanna put too much pressure on them.
Brian?
My question is on the lifespan of these things. Do you have an expected lifespan and when it's gonna have to be replaced or updated or
I
serviced?
think they last fair, I mean,
This
I'm
technology,
thinking
you
15
know, how
to
fast
15
it
years at
changes.
least. I know the bulbs will blow out on them, and so
Yeah.
those will need to be replaced, but they last if longer, at least if not longer than a Proxima, so, 10 years, 15 years. I mean,
Would you anticipate some software upgrades that are gonna be necessary? I mean,
that all
15
comes
years
with,
from now?
yeah. Well,
Or 10
at
years
this
from
point, the
now?
software upgrades come with the program, the package
So it
as we buy
automatically-
them.
the
Yeah, we
web
automatically
updates
get the
itself?
upgrades, 'cause it's all online. It's all web-based when you go log into them and download
Is
the
there
software.
ongoing cost involved with that?
Just the LCD, just the bulbs for the projector piece.
Okay.
And I don't know, I would imagine in 15 years, there's probably gonna be something bigger and better.
It'd be a hologram.
Yeah.
I'll be at that presentation too. Anything more on Smartboard? Now, each of the children would get like a clicker like they do in the legislature?
They look
Ask a
just like
question.
them, they have a little button, they're little
Yeah.
squares with.
That I
Do they
did
do
not.
smart boards in the legislature?
No, they use
That'd be fun,
clickers.
huh?
Oh, they have
No,
clickers
don't get me going on that one. You
Yeah.
said,
Attached to anything?
you said smart boards in legislature
Oh.
in the
Yeah.
first, and I'm not saying
Abacus.
anything. It's too much fun,
They slide the beads.
pretty much.
Pretty much.
No, I did not know that. That's pretty cool.
That's the whole neat thing about it.
Yeah, I mean,
Who wants to be a millionaire?
Yeah, there's
that's-
so much you can do with them.
But the assessment piece.
Mr. Chairman,
It
Yes.
really is.
it's called the New Hampshire Advantage by sliding the beads.
I get it. Well, don't forget, we have a paper system. It is all paper. If it's official, it's paper.
You should look at changing that.
Next question?
Do you want me to move on to another topic?
Yep, go ahead. If someone wants anything more on Smartboards, they will pipe up very quickly. And they haven't, so go for it.
All right, how about the Summer Success Program? Can you explain to me what that is?
Yep, so that's our summer program, that in the past, so historically, we started off, it probably services about 200 students, K to 8. It is for the student who, is getting ready to leave in June, who may be slightly behind, needing some catch-up, and that we anticipate with summer regression will come back in September even further behind. So we we assess students all year long, but we look at them and say, who are the kids that would benefit from that, so that they can do this, 4 to 6 week program. It's typically 3 or 4 days a week, couple hours a day, where they would get either individual or small group instruction to help catch them up on academics and keep them on pace, so when they come back in September, they're right where they should be, so they're not falling further and further behind.
Now, these are not students who have IEPs, though.
That
That's
we
a
have,
different
right,
group.
IEP students would be under here, but that would be under, you'll see it under ESY, under the 1200 lines, under
Okay.
special ed. That's a separate program. Now, what has happened in the past is, because we try not to segregate special ed from regular ed, so we've combined those two programs, and in fact, that has been a cost savings at some level, because typically, we need less teachers, because if we integrate them, you don't need 2 necessarily teachers in the front of the room, you need 1. And so that has worked well. When we cut that program last year, we had to then hire more special ed teachers, because now we actually need teachers and students. So they've always been together. But the regular ed side is for that kid who's, needs that extra additional push over the summer, that reinforcement, so that when they come back in September, they're not further behind from their peers.
I'm sorry, can I just interrupt? Can you give us a line item just so we can see what
I'm
we're
looking
talking
at,
about?
sorry, I'm looking at the sheet here. Looks like
it's
it's
right at the
1430, 111. I'm in district.
Okay. I mean, I'm familiar with it, I just wanted to see the numbers.
I'm going through the handout they gave us. So we didn't have this program last summer.
Correct, it was one of the cuts we made.
Did we notice a difference?
Well, what we did do, because we had some Title I ARA funds left over, so we offered it to actually a smaller population of students. What we did notice is that it's only eligible then for Title I, students who are eligible for Title I, so free and reduced students. I would say that, yes, teachers noticed for those kids who were behind, we were doing more catch-up in September.
Okay. So do we run programs at both Maple Ave and Bartlett?
Correct.
Would it be cheaper if we just ran one program?
I'd have to look at the cost, because busing may be a problem.
Okay.
Busing may add more costs.
Are we required to provide busing?
No, and I think actually in the past, I don't know that we're required to provide busing for special ed. In the past, I don't think we provided it this summer because it was Title I, so we actually had funds from Title I from ARA, so, it actually cost us nothing to run the program other than the ARA funds.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but there's not I don't know that it would cut down on staff, because we still would need the same number of staff. The other thing we use it for is our kindergartners transitioning to first grade. So kindergarten goes to their first grade building, so it also helps some of those more anxious kids or the kids who need more transition time. It allows them to get into the building. The same with fourth grade, goes to fifth grade, so they go to the middle school. So it helps acclimate them over the summertime.
Okay.
Having the parents taking advantage of it, it is helpful.
Actually, my daughter does do it, and it is very helpful. Any other questions on Summer of Success?
Yes, you mentioned the travel. The line that we were looking at was just teacher salaries. Is there a separate line in the budget for transportation for the summer program?
No, just for special, you'll see it under the special ed, under 1200 line, you'll see transportation, because we're required to do that, but under the summer success, there is no
So the
transportation.
non-special ed students going to summer success are
Okay.
responsible for their own transportation?
Correct, parents drive them.
Okay,
I have questions on a different subject.
go for it.
Stacy, has any thought, consideration, research, whatever, been given this year to that subject that comes up every year of pay-as-you-play?
That would be a great board question, but yes, the conversation, I think, comes up every year. And I think every year the board weighs the pros and cons of it. Would students participate, the cost for students to participate, the number of students who wouldn't participate. I will say the research, and Frank has done a good job. I think actually we shared this with the budget committee last year, I believe. He did some research on the number of students who actually participate in athletics or sports or an after-school activity, and their ranking in the class of the top, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was the top 100 students all participated in at least one athletic event. The bottom 50 students or the bottom 100 students, half of them or something did not participate in anything. So the research, and I could certainly get you that, just data from our school alone without going nationally, shows that the benefit, that is such a small portion of our budget. Ray, I saw back there, what was it, under 2% of our budget is athletics. So the number is so small compared to the benefit of athletics and co-curriculars.
Do we know what percentage of those kids who participate in sports and who reach these academic levels would stop doing so if they had to pay for it? Have we done any research at all with the parents or anybody else?
We have not done a survey.
Okay,
of
so we don't know
parents. No.
what kind of effect it would have on the number of students who would continue to participate, do we?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Good, Phil.
Stacy, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly, there was also discussion, because this came up when I was on the school board, that there's a fair number of students who play multiple sports.
Correct,
So the same
absolutely.
student may play 2 or 3 sports throughout the year, so you're not getting that same, it's not know how to say it, you're not getting a larger variety of kids, you're getting the same kids playing, multiple sports, so therefore
Right.
you'd be impacting the same family several times.
Right.
Plain and simple, if we didn't want to pay to play, that family would have to pay multiple times to play the different sports. It's not just they're paying for one sport.
You could always have a multi-sport discount.
Well, no, I understand that. I mean, that was discussed back then too.
I was saying, and the committee, I think it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, the committee was established. There was an established committee, school board members, public, community. They researched this topic, reviewed it, and came back to the board with a recommendation not to go that direction. That was, I think Daryl was still here. It was like his last year. My first year was in that time frame that committee happened. So it really is a small amount of our budget.
You said it was like 1.47% or something like that?
The flip side of that is the number, and it's something that the board has to weigh. If you ask parents to pay, say you put a $40 or $50 fee on that, are you now going to get parents who aren't contributing the significant money that they contribute either through booster clubs or volunteer time? I look at just our football program and the volunteers who are there. If they're now saying I'm paying $50, well, now I'm not all of a sudden going to make donations anymore. I'm not going to do in-kind donations. That was the other concern, was kind of the trade-off of parents are saying, okay, I'm paying for a sport, now how much more do I have to give? We get a lot of donations, we get a lot of time, we get a lot of volunteers. Our booster clubs raise phenomenal amounts of money to support our programs. We don't pay anywhere close to full price for our athletics.
It'd be interesting what a parent survey says, though.
And I need to check, when we talk about descriptive items, let's say it's a small percentage of the budget, even when we say 1% of 35 million is, $355,000.
That's a lot of money.
So it might be a small amount of the percentage of the total, but it's a big amount of money, and at 1.4%, if you're $500,000, 7 cents per 100,000, it's 35 cents on the tax rate, so it's,
And then does that include transportation too?
I have no
Athletics?
idea.
Yes, it includes the transportation.
Okay. So it's something to take a look at. Next,
You want another one?
go for it, please.
All right. In this budget is money for the math curriculum,
Yep.
correct?
Correct.
So the English curriculum, we're giving up on and we're gonna wait until the next thing
For high school.
for high school. But the math curriculum, you're talking about all schools?
So we're on a 5-year curriculum cycle. So I'll back up to the English language arts. So we revised English language arts for K-6 by paying with ARA funds. They were actually special ed funds that we were able to use for regular ed. So we purchased that program. 7th and 8th was purchased last year. We implemented it, we're implementing it this year. 2 years now, we had high school in there, and we can cut it out both years. And so at some point, we need to say we need to move on. We can't just keep holding on one cycle. So we have moved on to math. So what we're looking at for the elementary levels, yes, it is K to 12. We are looking at the elementary levels up to 8th grade, or actually 6th grade for everyday math, and the 7th and 8th grade is to purchase the supplemental materials for everyday math. We're still going to use that program because we find it valuable and useful and effective. And so we're gonna, what we need to do is upgrade, there's different modules that align everyday math with the new Common Core. And so let me step back and explain what that is. So we have the core curriculum or standards that we use in New Hampshire. Then there's now a national core so that everybody in the country will be on the same wavelength as far as standards go. So that if you were in New Hampshire and moved to Utah, the expectation for 4th grade math is about the same. And so New Hampshire has adopted the Common Core. So there's some changes within everyday math. So for K to 6, this will allow us to purchase those supplemental materials to realign the curriculum so that it meets that Common Core. Because eventually in 2014, our students will be assessed using a national assessment aligned with the Common Core, so we need to make sure we align ourselves, otherwise we're gonna be teaching students in the wrong grades, which means they're not gonna obviously do well then on the assessment piece. For our high school, we are looking because, while it aligns with the Common Core, algebra is algebra, we're looking to replace textbooks, because again, it's the curriculum cycle. We have some classes with textbooks that are over 20 years old and in really, really poor condition, and so, we're looking, that dollar amount in there is to replace our math textbooks.
So, but if we update the curriculum every 5 years, why would people have 20-year-old math?
Because likely I wasn't here when, well, I was the assistant superintendent at the time, not for curriculum, but my gut is we didn't purchase them because either we were cutting budgets. I'd have to look 5 years back at the budget to see why we didn't purchase them. It may not have been important at that time, but now we're just getting textbooks that are really old.
So what's driving the 5 year? I mean, why is it 5 years and not 7 years?
Because there is, in general, they've allocated 5 curriculum cycles. There's a 5-year cycle of that. So 1 year we review the standards and the curriculum and make sure we're aligned. The next year we look at materials. The next year we purchase the materials and implement the new curriculum or standards. The following year we assess where we're at, and the last year we make any modifications or changes, and then you start that cycle over again. So that you're actually always reviewing every content area is always in some cycle of review. So it's not like we do math for 5 years and then, like, language arts now is in, so now we're assessing how we're doing in Reading Streets with the implementation of that. Next year, we'll look to see what do we need to revise, what do we need to fix, what do we need more training in. Then the following year, we'll say, how are we doing with it now? And then just kind of start going back to the standards, because the state also, like, the state updates their standards, the national core will be updated at some point. So you have to continuously keep in line with that. So 5 years is just a cycle of the process. That makes sense?
So,
It was
but
a
they
lot.
never, every assessment results in the answer that we need to buy new materials?
No, every assessment results in, like, for example, in social studies, we purchased maybe, I think, a couple of years ago, I wanna say it was 4 years ago, was the social studies revision. All we purchased was some new maps. Like, we didn't purchase new material, that was really what we purchased. So it depends, I mean, we analyze it and say, what is it we need to do? The English language arts curriculum, we looked at and said, boy, we need to go to a common core reading program. And so that was a huge expense for us to go forward with that. Thankfully, ARA funds came up and that was nice. So no, not every year won't lead to new materials. Because, like, so I anticipate if we buy new math books, in 5 years, we're not gonna need new math books.
Okay, I guess that was my
Right,
question. So in
yeah.
like Reading
I don't
Streets-
anticipate in 5 years we'll need new math books.
So in Reading Streets, hopefully, we're hoping that,
10,
maybe we'll need
15
a few
years.
replacements, but
Right.
program's gonna
So,
be
yeah,
resolved.
so Reading Streets, I anticipate in 5 years, when it's the year to then purchase materials, it may be just some supplemental materials, they may have modified a section of it or a book or something, it's gonna be supplemental.
Okay.
I anticipate the core program that we purchased be at least 10, 15 years before we even
So
think
it's
about.
not automatic.
No.
Okay.
I was just wondering,
The new chair has spoken.
You were next.
Turn
Mrs.
it over to you,
Dan.
Evan.
Yeah. You were next, and then we have Philip.
I was just wondering, has any thought been given to any of the open source software now, rather than going to like textbooks? Are you familiar with Khan Academy? There's just thousands of open source software available, and Khan Academy is a superb example of that. My gut tells me if we're buying these high-tech devices and computers, and I think that's terrific. But from my sense of it, these young kids, we give them a computer, and Khan Academy has thousands
Absolutely.
of thousands of 3 to 5 minute open source free, and it is stunning.
I would absolutely 100% support buying a Kindle for every high school student and never purchasing another textbook and getting them online, except there's a cost to that.
but
I mean, to do that, I get it.
That's a lot better than
I
textbooks.
absolutely get it, but in order to do that, you have to have a device for every student to be able to read the textbook.
You gotta buy protection.
Like, we don't have, I mean, we
They're
have
cheaper than the
laptops.
TI calculators.
Right, yeah.
Yes,
I mean,
they
we
are.
have laptops, but we have
How many
6
kids
cards of
today
laptops.
don't have access to a computer?
Well, the difference with, I mean, they have to have it in the classroom. So when you're looking at a textbook, every kid would be able to have access to it. You can't talk about, let's look at page 7 and
My
not
gut
have everybody
feeling
able to
is
look
that
at
that's
page
the
7.
future.
Oh, I absolutely 100% agree. There's actually some districts who are piloting, kind of bring your own technology to school. Yeah, and you know, it's an interesting concept. I mean, it really is. You bring your own. Everybody can bring their own hardware in. You know, you want to bring in your Kindle, you want to bring in your laptop, and so we are watching that. It is an intriguing concept. You know, there's pluses and minuses
Rather
to
than
it.
textbooks
Right.
are just like,
Yeah, but again, the downside of that is until you get to a point where everybody has a device, you can't insist that that's the only way we're going to purchase them. Because otherwise you can't say everybody has to bring in a device to be able to access their textbook, because that wouldn't,
Is it possible to do both? If someone had a device and they were able to bring it in, you say, I have the software available for you, you have your own device, you don't need a hardcover textbook. So your back might be.
You could,
thought
right,
that was
at this
next on the line.
point, we don't have a huge, we haven't gone to allowing kids to bring in laptops, because we haven't created a couple things. One is, the notion that, 6th grade Johnny puts his laptop in the locker and somebody takes it. A lot of these districts have, and we're following them, we're watching, we've had lots of conversations as superintendents about what these districts are doing and how they're implementing it, because they, you know, it's a process of, they bring their laptop in, they log it in with the school resource officer or the school, they get access to specific areas of the network, because obviously we can't let them access, like right now, kids can't just bring in kids can't use a smartphone because they can't access the network that way, it's blocked, because we've had tons of kids who hack into the system. So there's lots of things to think about. I absolutely think in 10 or 15 years, that's exactly where every school district will be. I think people will go that way, because I do think there is a cost savings, but we have to get to a point where every student could have access to that.
these smart notebooks are coming out of India. You can buy one now, $50.
Yeah.
And you could give, I don't think it's 10 or 15 years away. I think it's right now.
Yeah. Well, I'd be more than happy to hear a motion that we increase the budget to buy one for everybody.
Are RAS,
As we reduce the budget for the textbooks.
Right.
are RAS Kids and Starfall, are those open source? Those programs, you know, the RAS Kids?
Oh, they're web-based, yeah.
Okay.
Philip?
Sorry.
I was waiting for the co-chair to stop speaking.
Along the lines of the question Ivan asked,
I guess we're gonna let
because
Richard go
there's
now.
a budget item for 250 copies of Semantic Antivirus,
Go,
$40
it's
a
your
piece,
song.
could you explain to me how the computer administration works in our school system? In other words, keeping my obvious question in mind, do we need this? Because my answer is, well, let's just get Microsoft Security Essentials for free.
AVG.
Yeah, and that's, I know Gary has come before this committee and answered that question. That's way,
These are the office machines.
yeah, that would be a great, Gary, I'll be honest with you, it's a technology question I can't answer. But I do know he's come before this committee and answered that question previously.
250 computers need a copy of Semantic Antivirus, according to your IT.
Yep. I don't know if anybody in the audience has any further, but I do.
It's just staff, right?
It's just staff.
Yeah, those are all the staff, computers that we lease from Apple.
No, Apple doesn't. All the Apples don't need it. It's all the regular PCs.
Those in the media center and those in the classrooms?
Yeah, any of the PCs. I think at the media center are all Apples.
Okay.
We tend to go with Apples because of the security. It's obviously easier. We do use open source software.
Phil?
Thank you. Just to tag on, I mean, that question Richard gets asked every year. And
So what's the answer? You've been here before.
well, the answer is that it's not as strong, the well, I should say, this new antivirus software is out there now that may be better. Back in the past, this was the one that they're purchasing has been the strongest that they can use for all the situations the computers get put into. And we asked for a list of all the computers, and when you start doing it, it does work out to the
So I
same.
don't doubt the number.
Right. It just seems like a lot of money, but the explanation was it was the best software out there at the time. Last time I heard the explanation that for the computers, and that was to prevent viruses to get on there, obviously, and having to do extra work to clean them up. So to buy the better software for the extra whatever, I know there's other softwares out there now. But, I mean, it might be best for Gary to come in and give us his 15 minutes explanation on that.
I'll just take a paragraph.
Okay, I can have him
So-
respond to you. Yep.
He can, because I assume that he can administer it from a central location with this common software. Because you can't do that with some of the open source stuff, whereas you can with some of the projects.
Yeah, I don't want to answer for him, I don't know.
Yeah, if you're okay, I'll have Gary absolutely answer the
that's-
question by
that's fine.
via email and get it out to you guys.
But the original reason I put my hand up was back to the curriculum stuff and kind of going with Ivan. I mean, I don't want to talk open source or web-based. My thought was if we're buying new curriculum stuff, we should make sure that it is available to the student via electronically, so that we're not buying a new curriculum that is only textbooks based. And the reason is so that kids can have access to the textbooks at home via the internet or whatever, however they want to get it. So I would hope, and I guess I'm asking the question, is the new curriculum stuff that we're buying that, so that the curriculum is available to be accessed for the students from home, whether they have laptop in the school or not. I want to make sure the kids can access it from home or wherever they are doing their homework. If they're traveling on vacation, they need to do
Right.
homework, they can access
I
it.
can tell you what we have purchased so far has been Reading Streets, Everyday Math. They all have online components. What I know at the middle school, the science textbooks are all online. What I can't tell you is the math, because we haven't gotten to the point of saying this is the math books we're going to buy.
Okay, well, I guess I would hope that would be one of your criteria of what you're purchasing,
Yeah.
is that. Because, I mean,
Yeah, if they have, I mean, at the high school level, I mean, the majority of publishers now, one is they're required to provide them by audiobook for kids like special ed students, which is very handy. On audiobook, I've yet to listen to an algebra textbook by audio, which would be fascinating. But, yeah. But most of them do have online components. But I understand, and we will certainly consider that. I would not want to limit. If we found a great textbook that was not online, I would not want to limit ourselves by requiring that. But it would be certainly something we absolutely 100% think about.
now, when you do, can I have a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. When you're doing that and you're buying textbooks, you buy them, the number you buy is one per student? That's gonna be at that, for the grade level? And you do a
Right.
projected highest level of
Yep.
students for that grade level?
I think the only place we're really looking to buy textbooks, the other is supplemental, is the high school.
For
And
the
so
high
then we
school.
would look at how many sections we normally teach for that. So Algebra 1, if we teach 4 sections, we would buy 25, so we'd probably buy 100 textbooks of Algebra 1.
How do you forecast?
Yeah, hang
how
on,
much
Richard.
you-
Richard, I've got a list here. Is your question, Guy, on this topic?
No, he can go.
Follow up on
It's
this topic?
yes. I'm not gonna initiate any questions, because I think this is working well. Those two ask. How do you forecast the dollar amount necessary for textbooks if you haven't chosen one?
Just based on historical value, what we know a textbook costs between $80 and $100. Some of the more expensive ones are about 110, yeah. Yeah, they're very expensive. But if we get 20 years out of them,
Income.
you know.
It's not like a college student, they could rent it for semester
Right,
for
right.
half price in terms
Yeah,
of
correct.
Half price.
eBay.
Yeah.
So you're all set with is that a follow-up on the same question? Because if you're going to a different topic, I gotta go to Guy first.
No, it was the same thing. about the price of the books. But it's like Barnes and Nobles and all these bookstores. I mean, it's like ancient history. It's like the Dark Ages. Printed
Right.
paper.
But
We still
again,
need
until we
to
have the
Kindle.
technology for every child,
Right.
you
I
can't
wouldn't
go
want to
there.
own shares in bookstores.
No.
Well, there are some people who actually learn by holding a book, so, I mean, all of the various different methods, but that could end up being a minority. And in fact, you could end up seeing, you know, you got your little smartphone, somehow we got it, and you're reading your text. It's way too small for my taste. This screen is very nice. I've got a tablet, an 8-inch tablet, that works nice too.
Have
Guy?
you watched a 7 or 8 or 9-year-old kid?
You
I
bet.
don't know what holding a book sometimes is.
I just got a quick question on a different topic.
Yeah, we're changing topics.
Okay, Stacy, do you have a,
Just not enough info.
you have an account, you have two accounts that are titled the same, but they have different account numbers. One is, and it's called Other Employee Benefits,
Fund 10, location.
Give us some more information.
290 and account 290 and 299.
Okay.
I was just wondering what the difference was since they're titled the same.
Can you give us a function, John?
Yeah, I don't
I might
know.
dig
There
that
could
up,
be 290s
yeah.
everywhere.
I can't right now because right now I'm trying to straighten the, nice work on the spreadsheet, by the way, Ray. I'm trying to manipulate it to fit my
Taste.
analytical style, I guess.
Yeah, if
But
you
I
can give
just-
me an account, then I could tell you.
Well, let me,
Sure. Hold on.
I'm just looking for 290s or 299s.
That would be
data filter,
uh,
what'd you want?
1200 special ed. You got one of them.
Is that in what schools?
Wait a minute. I don't know what school. I haven't finished this. I withdraw the question until I figure out where I am.
Well, hang on, it's 190 and 191?
Two.
290? I don't have
290
any.
and 299.
That must all be in Fund 21 and 22, because I don't see that account in the general fund at all. 290 and 299.
You're right. Okay. I'm all set. You're right, it's not.
Okay, so that makes it easier. All we have to do is go down to
Mhm.
either food services or,
Totally lost me. That's okay. I'm good with that.
because I haven't pulled those out
Okay.
yet, so I don't know. Other employee benefits is sitting
Adult
under,
ed, special revenues, adult ed, other employee benefits, that line is empty anyway.
function 2200, Fund 22. It's special revenues, actually, that's what it's
Yeah.
called.
Okay.
That's weird.
Can I get back to you guys with an answer? on
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
that? 290.
It was zero
299.
though, anyway.
yes.
There
it
was no
I
money
just-
in it.
Like, right now, I'm
It's the
straightening
news,
out
it's the updated spreadsheet you sent to me today.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, Rick, if I can make a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ray, when you put a filter on one of these columns,
Yeah.
the way your spreadsheet was provided to us, there's, in one cell is the account number of spaces, and then the title, okay?
It's inconsistent, the
But
number of
it's
spaces.
inconsistent, and I'm straightening it out, because sometimes there's 4 spaces, sometimes there's 6.
Yeah.
So you can't, unless you straighten it out, and that's what I was trying to do here, so I could filter by both, so.
Right.
Anyways,
Are you writing a little code, or are you doing one by one?
there's not that many of them.
He's doing
In the
one
new
by
one, but they
He's
were in the
doing
old
by
one.
No, not one by one. I'll filter, say, new furniture and fixtures, you copy the one that you want, then you filter by the second one and you replace it. Multi-select and replace, it takes 2
Oh,
seconds.
one command, get them all. I'll show you later.
Yeah.
Sorry. You have a question, another question?
Character
Anything further?
Analytical.
Back to you, Elizabeth.
I don't know how I,
You're not in charge, you just have
You're not-
questions. I'm just
No, I
going back
thought
to
you
you.
were in charge.
well, why is it always back to me? I feel like the anchor.
You have done due diligence. Kudos to you for going through and getting your list and having your questions ready for tonight.
I am a-
And we do, is it the silver, the gold star? I can't remember,
She needs-
Richard.
If she needs time to think.
I have one, but you can go.
You have an original, go for it, Richard.
I don't know if this is more of a question or just me thinking out loud, but since we're not in debate mode, I get a little more freedom, correct?
Terribly, lots of freedom.
Thank you.
They're gonna write a
During the
song.
presentation we had about 3 weeks ago, I heard a number of times from various members the phrase continuing declining dollars or continue to cut our budgets. And I'm new to this budget committee and voting on schools, so I went and looked at the school budget that was approved by town ballot from 2007 to 2011. And during that time period, the average increase in the school budget was $780,000. So I had no idea where continuing declining dollars and continue to cut our budgets, where that message came out vis-à-vis the area agreements. And to me, I didn't read anything about continuing to cut budgets in any publications. It only came from the source of the SAU and the school board. So if the people in the area agreements or the towns are getting that message, they're not getting the message from the actual budget. They're getting that from people who are using continuing declining dollars and continue to cut our budgets. We're using those terms. The fact of the matter is that, on average, for the last few years, $750,000 increase.
And can I respond?
Oh, yes.
I think, I do understand that the budget has gone up. However, there's been contractual obligations that have gone up along with that over the last, as I've been the superintendent, we have continuously had to cut over those years from where we started. And some of those cuts have been staff, materials, supplies. Last year we did not get the budget, so we had to cut to get to the default budget. So while, yes, the budget has increased, the requests that have been put in to hold and maintain what we have has been cut so that we have had to make cuts.
I understand that, but I know that if I make $20 an hour and I go to my boss and I want to raise to $30 an hour, and my boss says I can't do that, I can only give you 22, I'll go home and tell my wife that I just got a pay decrease. And I think what's important when we're representing Goffstown to the other towns, that we don't tell them our budget's getting cut. When we're adding, on average, the voters are adding on average $750,000.
Right, but that was the final budget that got on the ballot, which was likely very different than the budget that I sent forward to the school board, that the school board sent forward to the budget committee.
Right, but because you ask for something and you don't get it, doesn't mean your budget has been cut.
It's
But
an
that's-
interpretation
but
of.
that's the message.
Yep, and we have cut. We've cut staff, we've cut administrators, we've cut building improvements, we've cut CIP, we've cut. So I don't know how you explain that, how we didn't put things on CIP, they were not in the budget, so they were
I
cut.
wish Bill Bates were here because we could hear Bill talk about the economy at this point.
Yep.
But, yeah,
I don't know about that.
I just don't see an increase as a cut.
Right.
I've got Guy and then Elizabeth.
Stacy, would you agree, and maybe this will help clarify what Rich is trying to get to, that what the district and the school board has, at least since I've been on this committee, referred to as cuts are really not cuts to the budget, they're reductions in your requested increases? Would you
You
not?
can say that.
Well, I am saying that is the case, right? Factually.
You could say the reductions in what
Because
we've
we- well-
well, they could be cuts though. We've cut staff.
You
that
have,
we
but the
believe
budgets.
that was budgeted the year
budgets
before.
have not been cut. Your requested increases have been reduced. No budget's
You
been
could look
cut.
at it about 12 different ways.
That's,
That's semantics.
that's
If
fact.
you'd like to say that's how you'd like to interpret it, great, that's,
The numbers are the
yeah.
numbers.
I mean,
Okay, well, I'm not gonna argue it, but maybe, Richard, that helped clarify. It's referred to differently. It's called a cut when in fact it's a reduction in the request.
if I have a teacher hired this year and I have to reduce the budget and I cut that teacher next year, that's a cut. I'm reducing a staff member
Then let me
that
ask
was
you-
budgeted and have a role in our schools.
Let me ask you a question. In the last, I'm just gonna pick a number, 5 years, has the adopted school budget ever been less than the previous year?
Yeah.
Once.
Once. Okay. All right, so the cuts that you're referring to last year, and that was an increase, were not cuts to the budget. They were reductions to the requested increase.
Again, semantics, if that's how you would like to call it, that's how you'd like to call it.
I doubt the taxpayers
Yeah.
are gonna consider that semantics, but whatever. That's it, I'm done.
Dan, can I just ask a question?
Not yet. Elizabeth
Can I
had
get
her
on
hand
the
up.
list then?
Yeah, you're on the list.
Excellent.
Get it, Elizabeth.
It would be interesting to know what inflation was for those years. Some years I know it was really low.
Real
Some
inflation
years-
or the government's interpretation?
That, you're right, inflation is all regional too. So, but it is a factor. And I think what Stacy's trying to say, if I understand this correctly, is that, you know, as the price of oil has gone up and as the teacher salaries have gone up and so forth, it hasn't kept pace with that average increase. So that's how they've had to make the reductions, and that's why we got two things going on here. I mean, I wasn't gonna go there, I was gonna stick with the line by line thing.
Well, no, because
but-
I'm going to go to Lisa
No,
on
I
the
won't go back
topic.
to it. I won't go back to it. I mean, I won't go to line by line. Just let me finish this. I mean, but this is
Yeah.
the elephant in the room. I mean, this is the big question. There are people around this table who think that this budget, I mean, I don't think people are gonna argue with you about health insurance increases and the rising cost of oil. But there are people around this table who think that the existing budget can absorb those costs
Right.
without severe consequences. And I guess that's really what this whole thing is going to come down to, whether or not you think that's true.
And a good example would be oil, where what we budgeted this year and what we're projecting for budgets next year is I think a $200 and something thousand increase. Well, you could say we're not cutting you could say, but let me back up. That increase has to come from, so if you don't increase the budget, that increase has to come from somewhere. So if you reduce what we're requesting, we can't go without oil. We have to purchase oil. So something else has to go to be able to get that. And so that likely is supplies, materials, CIP items, textbook, that's where we've had to make. So when I say we had to cut a teacher, it's because our standard cost of I can't say we're not gonna put oil in our schools. I can't say we're not gonna clean our bathrooms. We're not gonna buy toilet paper. You have to do those things. We have a teacher's contract. You have to pay those costs. So when that increases and we don't get the additional requests that we're asking for, something else has to go.
But can I do my follow-up?
Yeah, because that's actually where I was going to go. If perhaps, and I'm not saying it's a fact, but if perhaps the calculation that I've done every year for the last number of years that looks at the default, and as a segue, do you know, Ray, when we're going to get a default calculation?
We can get one to you quickly. Give it up. We have a version that's out there, it needs to be updated for the school board's budget.
Okay.
I'll get one
Do you think we can get one so that we can discuss it on Thursday?
to you. Sure.
That'd be great, thank you. And so that basically is, when you look at that, the default budget is supposed to be that safe haven that some could look at that and say that's a level. Even though it's an increase, they're thinking it as a level. So anything above a default would be an increase, and anything below a default would be a cut, even though it's more than the previous year. That's another way of looking at it. And I think that takes into account what you were trying to just explain.
Yeah, except I would also, though, add, one of the things that we've found with the default is I'm gonna use the word cut, as we've reduced the budget and slimmed it down, the default, so what we now need, so say last year we cut all of our supply lines because other increases went up, we had to cut somewhere else. We cut all our supply lines by 20%. You can't maintain that. And so what isn't accounted for in the default budget is that increase in those supply lines back up those 20%. So that doesn't take into account. So as the budget gets tighter and tighter and tighter, the default doesn't allow you to ever increase those,
Right, but the-
restore it to
but
where
the-
we were.
But the very first time it was reduced by that 20%, the thought process that the default budget would have been adequate to cover it because it was the same cost. I mean, that's the default. So if it got cost because something else got added that wasn't in the default budget, and that was a choice that was made because something new had to happen.
Right, and those are things we weigh
Yeah,
with a
and-
500-page budget all the time. We need this, we need that.
Right.
It gets cut. Let me give you another
And Ray
example,
is-
like this year. So in this budget, in our current year's budget, we cut out technology. And so there is zero technology, so any technology added in is an addition that's not calculated in default. We cut out any maintenance projects. So anything that we're doing maintenance-wise is not in default, that is extra, that won't be calculated in there. So if we can all agree that we don't have to ever do any more maintenance projects in our school, we're all set. And we could live with default. But if we ever need to do those, and we're gonna do CIP, there's gotta be an increase. I mean, default doesn't always work that way when you've cut the budget.
Okay, my follow-up then
Yeah,
is
it's,
that
Ray may have something he can add to this.
Another little analysis I'll put together for you folks on Thursday, but I'm thinking 3 out of the last 4 years, we have been at default or below, and in some cases below default by almost $1 million. So that's another way to look at the reductions or the cuts that we've been talking about. But I'll put that worksheet together and you folks can take a look at it.
Okay, just so that I can get it in my mind, I've got Elizabeth continuing, and then I've got Lisa, and I've got Scott, I've got Ivan, and I've got Brian. Go ahead.
But to get back to this original point, though, I mean, some people would say, like with that oil analogy that you used, okay, so we have to put $200,000 more into it. That with the $35 million budget, you should be able to find an extra $200,000. I guess, how do you respond to that?
I would say, look at the detailed budget, which has every line item and every amount marked for something. Is there times where if a staff person left who is, a master step 12 and family plan, and we hire somebody bachelor step 1 single plan, there's always some savings there. I can't guarantee that, though. There's never a guarantee that there's money. I mean, if you look at the detailed budget, every dollar tells you exactly what we're buying. There isn't $200,000 floating around, under some line that says, here's the free money. It doesn't exist.
Okay.
Lisa?
I was just gonna make the comment, or I guess ask the question of the committee. The questioning that's going on here is vastly different, in my opinion, than the town questioning. With the town, we kind of went through, we talked about line items here, it's kind of, it's a little more out there. If that's the way this goes, then I'm gonna roll with it, I guess, if meaningful information comes out of it, but it's a little more combative to me. It sounds a little bit more debated to me, if that's even a word. I guess some useful information is coming out, but I found it very useful when we went through the town to go through the lines, talk about the lines, focus on the numbers.
Yeah. There's a couple of differences between the town and the school, the way the budget is presented, and the budget goes through and the budget is accounted for. One, you have the town, you have DPW. DPW, for instance, doesn't merge merge well with fire department and library. I mean, they don't cross over paths at all. And so it's easy just to take DPW. And remember, DPW, we went through a number of things within their sections. With the school, you look at the fund, the location, the function, and then the activity. The location being the school. But then you look at location 000, and some of that money goes to each one of the schools. And so you got to kind of look at it saying, okay, maybe we look at it by function. 1100, regular education. Regular education has a bunch of different activities that it does with it. But the activity in regular education, because the budget many times follows the student population, you're going to see that start to move from kindergarten through the elementary schools up to the middle school, up to the high school. And so people want to look at the budget by activity. So you can't look at it just by school because it doesn't give you that whole picture.
That's fine. I guess what I'm objecting to is in the town, and maybe I'm getting this mixed up because we've done a lot since those initial meetings. I thought we're asking questions, not necessarily, and they were targeted questions at something specific, not kind of blanket statements thrown out there to see kind of what would come back. And that's kind of what I'm hearing, and I'm just noticing that, and I'm not sure how helpful it is, but maybe it is. Maybe helpful information will come out of this.
It may be. I think sometimes it gets pulled out and we get a little bits of information. It may help people. If it's going to get too combative, I think, feel free to pipe up if you think it's getting too. I don't think it's been too bad yet. It's getting a little interesting when we talk about terminology and this and that and the other thing, and we really have to, at one point, agree to disagree, but for the most part, I think we've been pretty good, and I thank you guys for being very nice, as we can disagree on concepts, we can disagree on funding, we can disagree, but we need to be polite, and we need to be pointed and on target, and that would be the best
So
thing.
we don't necessarily have to ask questions then?
It was a question, I haven't heard not a question yet. What did I miss?
No, that's
It,
fine.
and I think the latest one would have been Richard, and he had a question talking about cuts and not cuts, and the definition and how it was.
Okay, so it doesn't have to actually pertain to numbers, it can just be kind of.
It can be a global question, because a lot of the thought process going around how it was created, for one thing, you look at that, Stacy said every single number in here is accounted for. And away we go. Now, if I remember correctly, Scott, Ivan, Brian.
Yeah, at least I think you stole some of my thunder. I think the approach should be pointed questions with respect to the school budgets, the school in particular budgets, and I understand your point, Mr. Chair, but I also have a different opinion in the sense that you go through this school by school, and you go through the kindergarten budget, and you say that we anticipate 200 and something students. We know we need X amount of teachers because we're shooting for a student-teacher ratio of X. And we can debate whether or not we're going to put a smart board in all these classrooms. I think that's justifiable. But we really don't have a whole lot of control over what we're going to be doing for their health insurance or what we're going to kind of, pay them and some other things. Now, and then you go on, you say, okay, I'm just going to skip to, say, the middle school. We had a discussion in the high school about paraprofessionals for the media center. We can have an intelligent debate about whether or not that's an expense that we want to, but at the end of the day, we need X amount of teachers. We can even have a discussion as to whether or not we need that replacement administrator. But again, if we know we're going to have 1,000 students and we have this many programs, unless we're going to say that this particular program is not beneficial anymore, then we should make a cut, and so on and so on. And then when we get to more district-wide things, I assume we are going to have debates about smart boards. We're going to have debates about other forms of technology, late buses, entrance into the high school, particular programs, et cetera. But one of the things that I've seen that's happened over the years is, and that's just both town and school, is, yes, the cost of the essentials, and when I say essentials, our salaries, our health insurance, fuel lines, things of that nature, those are going up and up and up, and when those go up, if you're trying to maintain level funded budgets, other things kind of have to go, or you have to defer them. On the town side, quite honestly, we've just deferred a lot of stuff, and it's a capital thing. In fairness to the school district, and having been a prior school board member, you can't defer the first grade class experience. You just can't. It still must go on. Do we want to have debates like we did about Parks and Recreation? You talked about fees and this and that, and I think Elizabeth brought up, somebody brought up pay to play, or maybe it was Guy. I think those are debates to have, but the core stuff of educating all these kids, I think that's what I think that the focus should be, is going through, like it's been done in the past, each school's budget. Is it reasonable based upon the students that we're expecting, the programs that we have, and the things that may or may not be reasonable? We debate, maybe we take motions on cutting or not, so.
Well, we're not at motions yet. When we
Yeah.
do get to motions, I would suspect that we will talk about it, determine which way we'll go, but traditionally in the past, we've kind of gone by school. At times, we've gone by MS-27, so we'll talk about that. I would love to debate some of the concepts you've come up with if you want to ask the questions.
No, I just wanted to make a statement.
But those are certainly good things. I mean, concepts are great, questions are great too. And we can go through and get it ironed out, because I'd rather, iron it out in a more free and relaxed atmosphere than when we actually go into the formal debate where we're actually going through and then we pause to get more information. And it's kind of like right now would be nice. Ivan?
I guess two comments. And it's kind of unfortunate, Richard started to talk about the impact of inflation. And the word that gets used, has been used, is bubbles. And we've lived through 10 years, and these bubbles should never have been allowed to happen, but a housing bubble, where housing, for a number of complex reasons, got way, way out of line. And we see that decreasing now. the housing market is collapsing, and likewise, we're in another bubble, and that's the education bubble. There's a lot of people talking about an education bubble now, where there's $1 trillion deficit that's gonna have to be paid. And the second part of that is,
Point of order. I'm sorry.
You just don't know where he's going. I'm going through the same thing. He said a education bubble. I'm not sure how it relates to budgets yet, but,
Well, we're asking questions here.
yeah.
We're trying to.
Do we get a question yet?
the second part, the question is, we're asking people who are at the effect of the housing bubble, who are losing their houses, who are getting cuts in pay, who are in deep trouble. And we look around and we can see it all around town, the empty houses, the people who are
I'm gonna have to
losing.
help Ivan again. We
We
came
are
to
asking
talk about
them-
the school.
We are asking them to pay
Yeah.
for the school part. People who
Okay.
have no possibility of retiring at all, have no prospects of retirement. We're asking them
Dan.
to pay for school retirement.
Can I tie it to education? And I would say that unless you have a good, sound educational system in your community, you're gonna continue to lose people who don't wanna buy houses in your town. So investing in education and investing in your community is a strong way to sell houses, to have people want to move to your community. How's that?
Great
That's
spec.
That's one opinion, there's another.
Right, so in your opinion is, I mean,
No, no, no.
Why- why
What's the,
continue?
what's
We're
I'm
the
asking
not,
question?
questions.
that's where I'm going for. There's a question in there someplace that we can get more information about a particular item? Maybe not. Okay, let me go over to Brian then.
This is I guess a more pointed question. Maintenance projects.
Yes.
I know we have several maintenance projects that you have on the agenda in the budget. Is there a way, and I don't expect an answer right here, right now, to prioritize those maintenance projects and maybe rate them as a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being can wait possibly, and 10 being needs to be happen this year, that we can evaluate? And without going into specific, like the carpet needs to be replaced.
Actually, I would love to see the specific, because
Yeah.
that's how we've been
Yeah, I
asked
mean,
to.
I
No, I want to see the
Yeah.
specific with, if you could take some of the projects, for example, the carpet in the library
Yeah.
that you propose to replace this year. Is that something that, is that on the, like, code red side of things
Yeah.
versus?
I mean, there's not a whole lot of
Part that
projects,
maybe-
so I can
That's
easily
fine,
for
right.
Thursday give you kind of
Okay.
a, here's all the projects that are looking to get done, and here's the ones that I think really need to get done.
Like the driveway in front of the.
Yeah, I mean,
high
they all
school?
need to get done, but which ones, like, some of our door replacements where, if you push hard enough on them, they'll open because they're so rotted,
Yeah.
really need to get done.
So those would be a
you
10.
know, a 10, yeah. So, yeah, I can,
But one is the one that you need to do.
Well, highest priority. Yes.
You don't know which side 10 is on. Elizabeth?
You don't want me to open this whole can of worms?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, well, you got a question in there, go for it. I mean, better now than when we start going to debating.
All right, well, I mean, and that's part of my point, I think. I mean, if we don't do this now, we're not gonna do it. And I do
We
think
probably will do
and
it, but-
I do think this is important. I do think this is what it all comes down to, because I think this idea of whether or not this budget is bloated impacts everybody's decisions. So to take this on a broader level again, I know that I have heard people say the school returned $2.3 million to the voters this year, which is proof that they don't need that money. And I guess I want to know
Well,
why.
I can go ahead and answer that question. They
Well,
didn't
I can't do it.
return.
I've heard of the answer to the question.
Okay, but it's all factual, it's all numbers. And it
Right.
wasn't a return of $2.3 million. It was a return about what, 636,000?
Yeah.
That's what it was a return of, because this committee has authority to put forth appropriations. When the school doesn't appropriate or encumber at the end of the year, that's the return. The difference of the money would be revenue received greater than estimate. And that's where it's gone. Now, that bubble is gone.
For this year.
The revenue that's been estimated for the fiscal 2012 year was estimated, best guess, very close. The appropriations were done bare bone. In fact, it was default budget. I would not be surprised, nor would I be disappointed, if there was no return to the taxpayers at the end of this current fiscal year. Because it's been honed quite precisely to flatline on both sides, the projected revenue and the expenditures. And so, does that, I know you wanted her to say it, but this was one thing
I
that,
don't think most people understand that, and I think
Okay.
that that has a direct bearing on how they view this budget, and how they, if they view that this budget has fluff in it or not.
but if I
Okay.
can get back to the point, right now, our job is to inform ourselves
Okay.
for the question today, and I'm hearing the other
Well,
side.
I
Let's
asked that
bring
in
it
part
back for
because
it
I
today.
have heard members of this committee make that statement.
Okay, well, maybe it's helpful now that we've gone through. Does everybody understand the concept of the appropriation and the return? Funds cannot be held by the school, the books have to flatline at the end of the year, and so that's return. It doesn't go back, in fact, I think I heard last Thursday, someone mentioned something about that going to the general fund of the town, and it does not go to the general fund of the town. It never reaches the general fund of the town. It goes directly to the tax rate calculation. That's where it goes.
Okay.
So it's, no, Hank thinks it's something different.
Are you saying that 2 million went to reduce taxes?
Yes.
Is that true, Scott? Did you use that 2 million to reduce taxes?
No.
School turn back?
I will say that funds went into the town's general fund.
How is that possible? No, the $653,000 that unexpended appropriation had to go back to the taxpayers.
Correct. But
Okay.
but there was a component that went into the town's general fund.
What was that? Because I need to know what that is, because I'm uninformed. Or malinformed.
2 million something.
Heard it here first.
I'll have to get that numbers from finance. but-
Yeah, let's
yeah.
go for that, because
Yeah.
that's quite important, because I was under the impression that it did not get transferred back to the town, but that, in fact,
Keep it-
I have the
if
tax
I-
rate
if-
calculation.
Right, but if I could, when the
Yeah.
towns was setting their budget last year.
Yep.
They had set their budget predicated on the use of $500,000 of fund balance.
That was 100,000, 100.
No, when we set it a year ago.
Not this past September, but the
Correct.
previous
I'm sorry, when we
September.
prepared our budget, we prepared it with the proviso that we would
Yes.
use up to $500,000 of fund balance.
Yes.
When we set the tax rate, we only used $100,000 of fund balance.
That's correct.
And we, in essence, did not use the full 500, so $400,000 went towards beefing up the fund balance.
Okay.
$2,326,000 right here.
But that's not all going in there.
No,
It-
then they had the other.
I believe the entire revenue, the actual gross appropriated revenue that came into the school is on the tax rate calculation
Yes.
sheet. Which means the entire revenue received by the school gets in the tax rate. That means the entire revenue from the school goes to offset, not the estimate, but the actual revenue
And that's
received.
why their tax rate
And
was
that's,
lower.
their tax rate is lower.
Right.
None of that 2.3 goes to the town. It all went back to the taxpayers, a piece by the revenue and a piece for the appropriations. The town is anything different, can be anything different. Now, you can check that with Dawn.
Yeah.
If anybody knows, it would be Dawn. Sure. But that, it just goes to the whole thing. And when we understand how the tax rate is calculated, it
Where's the
becomes a
whiteboard?
difference.
The whiteboard.
If only we had a whiteboard.
The whiteboard.
Smart board.
Yeah. I don't know how to use the smart board.
There's a portable one.
Once you understood that conversation.
I hear there's a portable smart board.
But it makes a difference because,
Who knows the answer?
well, here's the essence, because as we move forward, because the school is on a biennium, if the school completely flatlined the budget, okay? Meaning not even a default budget, but exactly the same amount, okay? Was appropriated for the next budget as the current budget, the tax rate for the school goes up. Because of how we have projected the revenue and tightened the appropriations over the last number of years. It's finally merged. This past September was the last time that the revenue bubble hit where your tax rate at your house, the total amount you paid, not the tax rate, didn't go up or down substantially at all. Okay? But the effect of the estimate of this year, okay, being flat for next year, reality sets in, the effect will happen in the purse strings. $1.70 maybe, you guys? It's a number, I'm not gonna project it, but it is a number. So that's something to think about.
Now, Philip Pankos kept calling that a bubble. Is that a bubble or is it a plateau?
What did
Is
you?
it gonna go down again?
No, it's not.
It's
No.
gonna stay at this new level?
It stayed at the new level. That's the adjustment.
All right.
Okay, that's the final adjustment. Because when the tax rate was set in the previous year, the revenue that was estimated was lower than the revenue that came in, you had a difference. That difference went to offset the tax rate, to reduce it. The estimate for the current year and the reality of the revenue coming in is going to be very close together.
Okay,
So there's not going to be this big adjustment happening.
okay.
And not to confuse it, I mean, you're talking several years of span crossing over each other. The money coming in and all this other stuff. I mean, we're looking at 2012, 2013 budget. You're talking
Yes.
about money from 2010, 11, and comparing it to a 2011, 2012 school budget. I mean, you're talking,
11-12 is what I'm comparing, 11-12
but
to
the money,
12-13.
but that money, that 2.2 million is not from the 11-12 budget, it's from the,
The 10-11, the adjustment from the estimate of the 10-11 budget versus the reality of the
Right.
revenue received.
So you're stretching three budgets when you're looking at the proposed budget, when you're talking those numbers, you're stretching it over.
For a two-year comparison, it's a three-year look,
Exactly.
yes.
But this
Some
is a
people don't know
one-time
that.
adjustment.
This is the
not going
one-time.
to be a
No, this is-
multi-year
No,
adjustment.
this is a one-time adjustment.
All right.
Instead of, see, that should have happened this past September. You should have seen a tax increase this past September.
Should have.
If the revenue had been projected closer to what the revenue had come in. If we had projected it the prior year, closer to how it come in, you would have seen the adjustment this past September.
All right.
We have postponed that adjustment till next year. People have one more year to save up their pennies now, so save up your pennies because you got the benefit this year.
Grandma's coming to visit.
Okay. I'm trying to find out who had their hand. Ivan had the hand, you had your hand. Then I think Scott went, and I think Ivan put his hand back up. Just want to do it correctly, and then I think Phil. Go ahead.
Okay. I want to just let folks on the committee know that in terms of monies that have come in through other sources, whether it be state or federal sources, on both the school and the town side, they've shifted a lot over the last decade. The last couple of years, if you've been following the state budgets, the governor's most recent budget called for additional funds to come in to get funneled through the schools, and there were some less revenue that came in on the town side.
Can I interject just for a second? Is the committee okay with the way we're going? Because I can hear another point of order coming, because I don't hear a question. I hear more information. I find it interesting. Is everyone good to go with the way we're going?
You get a good point, because we got the school folks here, and
Yes.
we need to direct our questions to them.
I think it would be helpful. They're here.
They're-
Why don't we
and I've
engage them?
seen some of their schedules are way worse than.
It's, yes, they have 3 towns to deal with,
Right.
okay? So is it?
Well, it's
can
one
we-
person's opinion. I'm just curious if
It's
others
just
want to
one
hear, let
person's
me
opinion.
finish what I wanted to say. It's-
That's, I mean,
He's halfway through, you might as well finish.
anybody else?
Yeah,
I'm-
that's interesting.
Okay.
Oh, don't ever say that about Scott.
Well, the point that I'm trying to make is that the sources of funds, and if you look at how the tax rate is calculated, a lot of it is what's coming in on state education aid, what's coming in on the town side through shared revenues, rooms and meals distributions, et cetera. And that money has fluctuated like crazy. What I wanted to say is that if you take a look at your tax bills and you look at what is the combined school taxes, local and the state education tax, and then you look at your town tax rate, you're going to be very surprised, because many of you around this table are going to say, oh, the school is accounting for all the increases. But what you're going to be shocked is that it's not actually the case.
Not true.
For most people, over the last decade, you'll see about a 35% increase on the school tax portion, and you'll see about a 90% increase on the town tax portion. And that's simply because most recently, you're seeing more monies coming in on the federal side and on the state side for education, less on the town side to a degree. But again, I'm just trying to be fair here. You know, folks should, a lot of people in the community, and maybe someone on this table think it's always the school. I think these are the realities. The money and the revenues are all over the board. And just take a careful look, you know, at those things. And I often hear things like, well, the budgets have doubled. I hear that a lot. The school that's true on the school side, the budgets have increased at a higher rate. And you're probably right, Richard, when you say $700,000 or $800,000 a year. But their revenues have also gone up a lot more than, say, the town would be able to offset. So just keep that in mind.
I
Thank you.
remember who was next, Ivan?
I'd like to make another attempt at asking a question this time. In the budgeting process, in the past, we've talked about, 25% of the school budget is fixed costs, the cost of insurance, electricity, and oil, and all of those to a large degree are fixed, but 3/4 of the school budget is compensation. And in the past, we've heard these are binding contractual agreements, they can't be touched. And now we've got so right now, that's not true, because the collective bargaining agreements are being negotiated. My question is, has the school board thought outside the box of other ways of looking at the compensation, the 75% of the budget, which is compensation, in lieu of the fact now we don't have binding contractual agreements, and we could think outside the box, conceivably without layoffs, there might be options. And I was just wondering, has that been kicked around?
I can't share because we're in negotiations right now. So
Yeah.
So we have not come to any agreement with either union. So I can't really say yes or no because I can't share what happens in negotiations.
Sure.
While we're renegotiating the contract, if we don't get a contract passed, everything stays the way it currently is. So, if we don't pass these two contracts, you're still stuck contraction to where we are right now.
Is that the evergreen thing you're talking about?
No.
No.
No,
Now, when you say right now, so step increases
Would not
happen.
Really, they stay at the same level. We gotta offer the same insurance, we gotta pay the same percentage of the insurance, we
Okay.
gotta offer the same salary
Okay.
and everything. We just stay right where
Right.
we are now.
No changes to the
It's not
plan
that-
or anything?
Yeah, it's not that we can change how we're educating kids and say, okay, we're gonna use less teachers and we're gonna go with more part-time teachers, less full-time teachers.
That you
We
can't
have
do.
options.
No.
But we are trying to be creative in our compensation packages. I think one of the places that you can see that is if you look at some of our principals' contracts, we have offered them other enticements in lieu of significant raises.
Answer your question? Well, as best as it possibly
Yeah,
can, given
I
the-
understand
I
this.
mean,
I
I
wanted to
definitely
make
think
a point.
I think the board is definitely thinking outside of the box a tad bit and working. Whether the unions will agree to that or not is another question. But yes, I can say that the boards are working diligently with those things in mind.
I just wanted to say, I guess it's an opportunity, that's all I
Absolutely. It
wanted to put out
absolutely
there.
is. Yep.
If the CBAs, the collective bargaining agreements, get approved by the school board, if we will see a minimum of 3 warrant articles, correct?
2.
One for the budget, one
Okay.
for the CBA for the teachers, and one CBA for the support staff.
Correct.
That would be the operating budget, so to speak, if I wanted to put all 3 of those numbers together. Okay. And the taxpayers would, or the voters actually, not taxpayers, would be able to vote on each one separately.
Separately, correct.
Elizabeth has a question on a line.
Yeah, shocking.
What's the number?
The Glen Lake nurse, so
That would
it's
be
Glen Lake, it's 2130, and the line
103.
is 111 and 113.
LNA hire to replace nurse board directed reinstatement of nurse and LNA release.
So I remember we talked about this at the all-day presentation, the LNA, doesn't do enough, or is not, I don't mean any personal.
Yeah, so I can give the board the historical, so last year when we were looking to make reductions, cost savings, thinking, we were trying to think outside of the box of what are potential savings, and we looked at Glen Lake and said, boy, it's a 2.5 hour day program twice a day. Could we have some cost savings instead of having a licensed nurse? Could we put an LNA in that position? Somebody who can, give medications if we need it, change Band-Aids, call parents, do that kind of stuff. So that's the direction we went. We hired an LNA. Unfortunately, through this process, we've now found out that an LNA under their license can't give medication, can't make any assessments. So they can't even take a temperature and call a parent and say, your child has 101 temperature, we'd like you to come pick them up, because that's making an assessment.
So what can they do?
So that's what we have found out. Interestingly, we thought we had the answer, and we thought this was a great solution. We figured an LNA working under the direction of, because the principal can provide medication and the principal can delegate that authority. So we delegated the principal's authority to give the LNA medication. Well, apparently that's a conflict with their license. And so we had to undelegate that. So we've actually changed the role of that person to get it through this year. And that's when we determined we had to go back to a nurse because the LNA can't do anything.
Okay,
so we took the LNA out and put the nurse back in.
Okay, so in 2011, we had a nurse, and it was budgeted at $46,000. Then we dropped down in 2012 to an LNA, and it was $28,000.
29.
24, yeah, 29. Yeah, now we're reinstating the nurse, but it's for a lot less. It's $38,000.
Correct. The position that was in there was a nurse who was at a higher level, so we would, because it's Glen Lake, we would absolutely 100% look to put a nurse in there that was probably a beginning level nurse.
Okay.
So it's just what we're projecting. The salary from the last year in the budget was the actual salary of the person in the position.
Okay, so it's a net difference of about $10,000. Okay. Did I remember you saying at the all-day presentation that you were also looking at nurse staffing at the other schools as well?
Right, so as laws have changed, and so one of the questions that has come up with the middle school and high school is with the EMTs. So we currently have an EMT at the middle school and high school. And I think this is a statewide question, is that as EMT licenses have, and as the state has crunched down on what an EMT can do, we're finding the role of, it's an interesting process because it's something that the state has not regulated really tightly, but they're really coming down. And so they're now asking us what an EMT can do in our schools. We're finding that the EMTs can't give medication either. And so we're actually now going through the process of reassessing the purpose of an EMT versus the nurse. Are we better off taking the two EMTs, replacing a nurse, having two half-time nurses? So we're at this point analyzing what that looks like. So that's that conversation, and that's just recently as the regs have come down. We've been working with Rich O'Brien at the fire department to help us with those regulations. We have a relationship with CMC as well who provides kind of supervision for our EMTs. So we've been working with them on kind of more clearly identifying the role of an EMT within the school system.
But that's not, at this point, reflected in this
No,
budget.
the EMTs are still in there, because we haven't, it's gonna take us some time to flesh out what that looks like, and, it's because the state is coming down harder and harder on EMTs and what they can or can't do. And so as that's filtering down to us, and we're working with them to help understand the regulations, and so, that'll be a process we'll work through this year before we hire anybody, obviously.
Can we define EMT? There are EMT 1, EMT 2, and what used to be an EMT 3 is now a paramedic. Are we talking
They're
EMTs or paramedics?
EMT basic.
Oh, that's the
That's the lowest
That's the
level.
low, that's EMT 1.
And one of the interesting pieces that has come up with this is, at the middle school, we actually hired an EMT intermediate.
Right.
Because we're educators, I'm not an EMT. And so there was some conflict of what the EMT intermediate was doing versus what we have the ability, we're only I don't want to say license isn't the right word, but we only have approval to hire an EMT, or the job description is an EMT basic and an EMT
really?
intermediate
Yeah.
It's paid more.
needs different something or.
Well, they
like
could
it's-
get paid more.
Yeah,
but
and
They
it's
have more
different.
qualifications, they have a different certification,
Yeah,
they're
and
approved to the
so
state of doing more things.
We have an EMT intermediate who is only allowed to do EMT basic, based on our relationship with the, CMC.
It- Can that be overcome?
I don't know.
Because that sounds.
It's complicated.
I got,
You've been
yeah, but
that
it
way
sounds
for a
real,
while.
yeah, but it
Yeah.
sounds real silly. I mean, if you had a paramedic on staff, and that's something that should be looked at as well, because a paramedic, under a doctor's authority, can actually stick. Do
Right.
needles, and put medication and things of that nature, and they may be less expensive than a nurse, I don't know, but it could be something to look into.
From the doctor.
That's correct, you have to be on, but a nurse, you have to do the same thing. I mean, but
No, a nurse
But-
doesn't. Not
Right.
a registered nurse does not have to do that.
right, but so there, I'm not sure where it all goes,
Yeah.
but that sounds interesting and potentially silly, but I think that CM, job description,
working
change it,
with
yeah. Checker?
My question is about medically fragile students, and who, or what's the lowest certification that we need, because we know those students come
Yeah.
into the building and we have
I mean,
responsibility.
we have
quite a few.
the majority of our really medically fragile. I mean, we have kids who are in wheelchairs who need to be fed, who need to be tubed. I mean, they require an RN. I mean, they require a nurse, and so that's one of those things that we have to always analyze. We have kids who are severely diabetic that require monitoring all the time. So we always look at what our needs are. It's the same as if we have a nurse out and we can't get a nurse substitute. We have some buildings that absolutely 100% need a nurse because we have kids who need U-tubes fed. And so we shift nurses around. So maybe at Bartlett, we need a nurse to check in on a diabetic student once, they can go do that, but then they shift to the high school to cover that. So we absolutely have kids who 100% in their IEP and in their care plan need a nurse.
But right now, we're sometimes splitting nurses.
Yeah, we try, nurse substitutes are hard to come by because they can work for the emergency room and get paid a lot more than the $75 a day we pay them. But we try, it's not often we can't get coverage, but it does happen on occasion. But yeah, nursing services do have a place in our schools because of some students' needs.
So that's $75, is that the half-day kindergarten you're talking about?
No, that's if we had to bring, like a substitute teacher, we bring in substitute nurses if a nurse is out.
Right, and it's only
And that's
$75
$75
for
a
a
day.
school day? What are the hours?
It's a regular school day,
8 to 3?
6.5 hour, yeah, whatever a school day is. That's what we pay our teachers subs.
Really?
You still get paid more at the state.
Yeah,
I think so, I mean, that's.
It's actually, it's $65
Wow.
if you're not certified, it's $75 if you're a certified
Yeah.
teacher.
Checker,
Okay.
Scott?
Oh, on that list somewhere.
We talked a little bit about pay to play. I'm just going specifically to revenues. You have a limited amount of revenue sources, but are there any ways in which you are looking to generate revenues? And I know you've instituted a parking fee at the high school where students have to pay for that, which then offsets the cost of the lot
Parking
person,
attendant.
parking
Yeah.
attendant.
Parking, it's
Are
not
there
quite,
any-
I don't think
and
that's.
again,
We
I
like to
don't
call
think
it
that's
parking
the-
attendant.
Parking.
You flip them the keys.
Well, person,
Valet parking.
they call them a lot lizard.
Flip them
Yeah,
something
like
else.
that.
That's not exactly
That's
nice to
his
say either, but,
That's what it's doing.
are there any other, talked about the late bus. I mean, I think, are there any avenues where the administration or the board is exploring ways in which they can recoup some of these increased costs through user fees, such as pay-to-play, busing, anything, co-curricular fees,
Yeah, as of right now, no. I mean,
But
I think
why-
the board has always tossed around different things, but nothing has come to fruition. Again, it's, how much can you ask parents to continue? Are we gonna, I mean, there's checks and balances to everything. One is how much can you ask parents to continuously pay? They already provide school supplies, at the elementary school. They get the list every year. The other notion is, and I'll add this, is as we reduce staff, you need staff who are gonna manage this. So you institute a bus fee, you have to have staff to manage that. who's gonna collect all that money, who's gonna make sure everybody's paying. We have cut our secretary staff down as far as it can go. So again, the more of that you do, I think the more costs you get, because you have to have somebody who's gonna manage that piece of the puzzle. I mean, for us to do parking fees is 4 or 5 days of our secretary's time, just to collect parking fees.
Is that an annual collection?
Yep.
That works. Another question? I heard there was a request from the other two towns possibly for, I didn't quite get the whole concept of a fifth graders in sports or something.
They had
I'm
that,
trying to
yeah.
relate that to potential revenue and what
Yeah.
would the revenue be if that were to happen versus the additional cost?
Yeah, Dunbarton had asked if it was possible for Dunbarton fifth and sixth graders to play athletics at the middle school, if parents transported and they paid.
Do they go to school there?
No, they go to school in Dunbarton.
That was the piece that I wasn't sure on. Okay.
Yeah, and that's something I'm exploring, whether that's a good thing, bad thing,
Okay.
where that falls, and what that would
Okay.
look like.
Nothing in the current budget reflects anything like that because
No,
it's a
that was
new
just a request
concept.
they had asked.
Okay. You got an individual line question there?
I do, actually.
I see a lot of colors there. Go for it.
Stacy, I'm gonna go back to the curriculum thing since I wanna get back to some actual specific questions here. On the high school, I'll even give you guys a line, 10, 305, 1100, 641. It's around $118,000 is in the budget. Is that for,
Actually, it's
124.
It's 165. The
Did I read the
118
wrong
is
line number?
the increase.
118 is the increase?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I got the wrong. You're right, 118 is the increase. The number I have down is the increase. Is that increase all for the new textbooks, or is that?
There's, if you look at the detailed budget, it's pretty broken down.
Yeah.
So 124 is for the new math textbooks.
124
Yeah,
of it's for the?
yeah, estimating one textbook per student.
That's one of those
In
very,
there
very
is
long
also
explanations.
7,600 for vocabulary books, which we purchase annually. Let's see, one of the things with AP courses, which are great, but when AP decides they're going to revise their textbook, we have to purchase the textbook, otherwise we can't consider it an AP class. So you'll see a couple in here. Of those, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens is a book we buy for all of our 8th graders. Going into 9th grade, it's a summer read. And then that's carried on through the curriculum in the high school. So the math revision is 124,000. The others are textbooks that are sometimes kind of usable textbooks. The vocabulary books are used every year. They're like a workbook, so we replace them every year.
Okay. I mean, I appreciate all the detail. However, this one's not as, or maybe it's just the way it's in this
You gotta look
spreadsheet.
at page 196. This is the one that
Yeah,
was
if you
like
look at the detail budget,
6,100
it's really clear.
texts.
That's one of the big ones.
That
Okay.
was one of the big ones that
Okay.
didn't quite fit.
Doesn't look the
Now-
same.
Well, no, I mean, trust me, I appreciate all the detail in the background. I missed that. I was looking at this in here and it wasn't as clean as that one right there. Can I have one other question in the high school,
Go ahead.
if I may. The SRO officer,
Yep.
2410, 339. That was cut from this past year's budget, or this current budget. Is that correct?
That was, so, that
was
was one
zeroed
of the
out.
positions that I like to call it our do not fill positions, that we reduced as part of the retirement costs that we were anticipating, that when we had to do the $622,000 that we were anticipating. So that was in that pile. I've had lots of conversations with the chief and said at the end of the year, if we have the money, certainly bill us. And so that's kind of the notion. We put it in the budget next year. That was a request from both the selectmen and this committee, was to put that in there, so it is in the budget at the request of this committee.
I apologize. I didn't get my full question
Yeah.
out, and that's my bad.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. You mentioned pretty much all of that, almost exactly that. so we do have the officer in the school, but the town's picking up the cost of that additional 45,000 in their budget?
We have not received a bill for it yet. If we get a bill and we have the money, the school district would be more than happy to reimburse the town for that. I mean, that's a.
Which is admirable, but I mean, at this point right now, we have the officer in the school.
Yeah, and I believe the chief's notion is that we've had the officer in the school and it's a needed position for them. It saves them actual time because they don't have to continuously go back to this, you know, it's a cost factor for them. They'd be having somebody there anyway, so, it's a position that
Okay.
they feel is valuable.
Scott, you stepped out when I asked this question about the SRO.
Yeah.
How is that being,
Is this gonna be other revenue in the town? When they-
help me out
when
here.
We're gonna bill them out?
You know what I'm trying to ask.
We're gonna
When are
bill
we sending
the
them a
school
bill?
for the
Where
SRO?
is that money coming from? I guess is the bottom line.
Covered it.
Who's covering the cost? If
Where's-
the school doesn't have the money at the end of the year,
The town.
so something will be,
I mean,
There's an appropriation in the town for that
yeah, I mean,
officer.
yes.
Yeah, it's a
And-
For the full
officer.
amount?
And the chief is,
It's revenue.
so it's lack of revenue on the
yes, it's
school
would be
town side.
lack of revenue on the,
There's my answer.
right. And the other thing too is
Okay.
that in light of the fact that there are discussions going on with 2 other communities, I think we'll wait a bit before we further engage in those types of conversations.
And that, the SRO is in this budget.
But that's it's a lack of revenue. The town carried, that's the piece I was forgetting. The town carried the full cost, but carried this percentage of its time, this officer's percentage of its time
Revenue.
as revenue.
And we don't get that.
And we just.
Coming out of the police's budget?
Because it's a
A
sworn
full-time
officer,
Right.
and then when they're not in the school for those 180 days, then they're doing other functions. But as
That's the
chief
piece I
said,
was missing.
3,000,
Thank you.
whatever is a third, or I'm sorry, a fifth of the population is at any given time, or six, is in the school, so it makes sense to have it.
Okay, that's the piece I was forgetting. Thank you.
Really? All the schools or just the high school?
No.
And just
I mean,
Goffstown residents or all of them?
I don't know,
in the
He
school.
said that before. I mean, I know you do
No,
the
no,
quick
I've
math,
never,
you're
I've
doing
never
the-
really heard that, but yeah, I'm doing the
he-
math.
No, he said, with all these kids in there, it makes sense for us to, and not to mention if you have faculty and everything in the school, so it makes sense to have somebody there.
I mean, if I can ask Ray, the calculation for the estimated revenue included a portion for the SRO for the 2012, 2013 budget?
From the supporting
Part
council.
of the tuition rate, yes.
Yes, okay.
And then
You all set with your, go ahead, Dick.
I'll let others go.
Yeah, Stacy, I was reading there about, it says it, an increase due to 5.5 new position requests. Them new position requests, are they positions
I guess
that
I
you
can go
cut
this one because it's not the
to
details.
save money because of the default budget? or-
Some of them are, so, we had a conversation about 2 library paraeducators that were cut. One was, one has been, the middle school one has been cut 2 years in a row, and the high school was cut this year. So those 2 are. There was also a request
Take a
for an
look. Just
additional
wanna make a
foreign
copy.
language teacher at the middle school, because our numbers are capping at 30, and we're capping classes at, like, we're getting 30 kids in a foreign language class. Which we wouldn't want to put 30 kids in a foreign language class at the high school, let alone 7th and 8th grade. And so we're either, if we don't have the position, we're going to need to either we're going to have to limit the kids who can take a foreign language. So we're going to have to cap it and say, we're sorry, you can't take a foreign language. So we're looking to do that. And then the part-time position is additional special ed staff at Glen Lake. We have a part-time special ed teacher there. And so they work half a day. So what we're finding is we tried to slot most of our kids in the morning who needed the additional services. We're just finding we can't do that anymore. And so we need the additional services in the afternoon as well.
You're pretty tight on staff at Glen Lake already, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Glen Lake staff really work well with our schedule because they have actually a bigger block of time in the midday. So they actually work and then they have some free time off that we actually don't pay them, and then they come back to work because of the schedule. So it's
Free time.
yeah, well, because we don't
Very,
pay
very
them
long lunch.
from start to end.
I don't know if they qualify
yeah,
as
it's,
free time.
You have another question,
Yeah,
Tom?
so
Elizabeth?
I don't, yeah, we,
He's still
we work
looking.
with them.
I'm looking
But
for
you
my
know what, I
detail.
mean, we have a lot of staff. At Bartlett, we have a part-time custodian who comes in. At Glen Lake too, they come in the morning, open up the school, leave, and then come back to do their custodial services. And we can do that if we don't have staff who are willing to do that.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Okay, the biology field trip at the high school, lines,
10,
Yep, is that marine biology?
305.
yeah, that is line, where is it? 27, 21, 519, and 27, 25, 511. Now they, on the handout, they both say reinstatement of biology field trip. And I know you mentioned one was transportation and one was the actual cost for the trip. And I'm
Yeah.
looking at the,
What was the second account? You had 519 and what? 511, okay.
You want to look at that?
they both look like I must be reading this wrong because they both say transportation on my spreadsheet. Student transportation and other student transportation.
What was it was, the high school 305.
The high school and then
29.
the function was
27,
27, 21. And then 27, 25.
Floating.
Yeah, so 20,
One is the rental of the dust.
252.
Well, that's other student transportation
yeah,
is
so
the,
that's
is the
actually
boat.
the buses.
No, it's, the 519
That's the boat.
is the rental of the boat.
The boat.
Okay. Okay,
The
so,
511 is the bus.
okay, so last year,
Take the bus to the
we
boat.
funded this trip, we only put in what, $1,100, $1,125 it looks like? Or
It
this
says
current year, I
22.
mean?
Yeah, so in
2,200.
up to this year, we've always fully funded it, and it's for, let's see, it's,
That's the one I'm looking for.
where's I only have pen line? $35.50 for the transportation, and it's $4,587 for the rental of the lab. We have always budgeted it. When we got default, we cut that this year.
Okay.
So that's what, so if you look at the detail budget, like on page 252, under the 519 line, it was 4587. This year is 0.
Okay.
And we're looking to put it back to 4587.
So are they going this year?
The students they have created a massive fundraising drive to try to pay for it.
How many candy bars can you eat?
A lot. They have a big fish on one of the doors. We're about this far on the fish.
Are these all juniors or?
It's a mix. It's anybody who has biology, which I
this
believe.
question?
Marine
how many
biology, yeah,
students
but
are
they're
we-
also, it's also a lot of the biology students.
How many students are we talking about?
It's a couple hundred.
So it's
a big
chunk
trip.
of students.
And it's a huge curriculum. It's a huge part of the curriculum.
Okay.
Scott, follow up on this?
Yeah, I will vouch for this program. My daughter just did this last year, and I think she wrote like a 40-page lab
It's
report
huge.
after doing it. They do experiments, but I guess this is gonna. I don't want to put you on the spot here, Stacy, but I don't think there were any cuts, or if there were, they were very nominal to say athletics and co-curriculars in terms of this particular budget that we're in right now, where this is not funded. Is there a reason why the administration of the school board voted to cut something which is clearly academically oriented and not cut something where there are co-curriculars that are not, and then there is no fee? So I guess,
Well, I would disagree, because we cut 20% of all the supply lines for both co-curriculars and athletics. We cut all athletic uniforms, we cut any increases in athletics. For co-curriculars, we cut all dues and fees, so we did cut those lines as
Okay.
well. Yep.
I had another question, if I could,
I'm done with.
You're done with that question? You had another
Yeah, I had a
question on
revenue
revenue,
question.
then I
This
have
may be a
Phil.
Ray question, not sure, but when I look at, you provided us with this sheet.
You see it from there, Ray?
You remember this one, right?
Fourth line.
It was a handout
It was a
at the
handout.
Saturday.
Right. And I guess I'm curious as to, and I'll just read it so that folks who might be watching. In 2009, 2010, the local revenue other than taxes for tuition was $4.9 million in 09-10. In 2010, 2011, it went to about 5.2 million. Then in 11, 12, it went to 6.8 million, and now it's proposed at 6.5. And I guess the big question is, what happened? We see the numbers that are coming in from the New Boston and Dunbarton. What caused an increase of $1.6 million in revenue from 2010, 11 to 11, 12?
You want to answer that one, Dan?
I can give it a shot. This is an actual. This is budget.
Right.
This is the MS-24, which is the, and this is what we talked about earlier, where the $5.2 million that was estimated came in at about 6.62. 6.2? Right. It came in at 6.2 or 6.4, someplace
Somewhere around there.
above that. So this is
Okay.
the estimate. And so that's where, when you
Well, that's good.
create the tax rate.
Fine, I'm good there. Then why are we $1 million? Why are we $1 million off on our projection? I mean, if we know, I
Were.
mean, what we
Were.
Well, we
Why
were.
were
Will
we?
not be any longer.
We will not be. So we were always shy
Think
on
back to
that.
your days on the school board, Scott, you'll probably remember.
Okay.
There were conservative estimates put together for tuition.
And so now.
One of the things, and again, there are several elements to the tuition. We have what we collect from the sending districts. There's also the GAP program, and there's also special education tuition revenues that we do collect.
Okay, so.
Programs. So what we were doing is looking at a portion of the regular education tuition only and not addressing, as we should have, the totality of the sped tuition and gap program tuitions.
Okay, so it's safe to say that over the last few years, several years, there's been a switch over to a lot more realistic.
Yes.
And therefore, that's having an impact on the revenue, and that's what's generating those differences in the revenue.
Yeah.
In projected estimated revenue, not actual revenue.
Okay.
The actual revenues have had a steady stream of coming in the way they came in.
My
If you
other-
look at actual revenues.
In fact, one more question?
Yeah.
Special education, what has the district done to try to reduce out-of-district placements? And if so, if you've been successful, can you give us have you been able to reduce your special education costs?
Absolutely. So we developed, and a lot of it we were able to do with ARA funds. So when you take ARA funds that we got, what we did was we hired staff we at least created 2 programs at the elementary level that we did not have. One for our more severe needs and one for our behavioral needs. We were able to pay for them, which allowed us to kind of put that beginning program in place. It allowed us to bring kids back in district. It allowed us to not take kids out of district. If you saw in the revenue, in what we had saved last year, and what we gave back was just there. I'm not gonna be able to find the page. It was $300 and something thousand that we did not spend in out-of-district tuition. Out-of-district tuition this year is down, budgeted down approximately $250,000 because of those programs, because we've been able to keep kids in district versus sending them out of district. And by developing those programs, that's how you do it. So we've had a continuous significant decrease in our special ed costs.
Are there anything that you're aware of in terms of, as a superintendent of schools, for us around this table, for most of us, the only world that we know is the Goffstown budget, except for Dan, who knows other, and I'm talking about school budgets
Yeah.
or town budgets, but do you know anything about other school budgets in terms of that are similar in size, whether it be like Milford or others, that, what maybe in theirs that is not in ours, or vice versa? Do you talk about that?
Yep.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to get my arms around, are we different than other communities? Are we doing a better job? I see the average cost per pupil, and you might say, well, that looks like we're doing a better job. But is there anything that you know from speaking with the superintendents?
I would say the one place that we could probably improve on is opportunities and options for courses at the high school, as well as continuing to look at the middle school and what we can do to add rigor to students at the middle school. Other courses, so we only have X number of math teachers, so for an example, this year, we're needing to bring in a higher level, an additional AP Calculus B class, because we're now offering Algebra and Algebra 2 at the middle school. So what we're finding is we're capping kids out, and so we weren't offering enough higher level classes. So we added an AP Algebra 2 class, an AP Calculus 2 class at the high end. Well, because we're not adding staff to do that, it means one less section of something else to be able to offer that. So I think eventually, as we weed out option, I think what we're doing is we limit ourselves because we're not adding more staff to be able to add more opportunities for expanded coursework.
Can I get a follow-up?
For
No.
that
I'd say
particular
one area
one,
that
Yes,
I
for
think
this
we could
particular
I
improve
was
on.
looking at a bunch of people and there wasn't a whole lot of interest in am I wrong?
Well, this one you might get interest in.
Okay, because I have others that are on the
Yeah,
queue.
well, the question is, you talk about these courses, is there an opportunity to hire part-time teachers to only teach a couple of classes at the middle school or at the high school? Because you're talking about,
That could be a pertinent question.
do you have those opportunities? Does the contract allow it? And to me, that would be a win-win. You have people who may be able to work a few hours during the day, they're qualified teachers, and then we don't have to pay them benefits, so.
Yeah,
Like
you
Elizabeth
can,
or
and we
something.
have done it before. I'll be honest with you, it depends on the level of the person and how expensive they are. Sometimes it can be hugely expensive to bring somebody in just to teach a class. Because the value and benefit you get of somebody full-time, is that you have them there all day, they can help with duties, they can help stay after school. When you hire somebody for a block, they come in for 90 minutes. And that's what you get for a prorated cost of a block. So it tends to be an expense. We've done it if we've had like difficult to fill positions for subbing. So if a teacher goes out, say on maternity leave, a teacher who teaches Latin, say, she hasn't done this, but if we have a Spanish teacher who can fill that slot for a course, like, so we've split things up, so one teacher might take one class, one teacher might take, it actually costs you more than just hiring a teacher sometimes. Yeah, because it's a block cost versus, you don't separate, you don't take 8 classes and divide the salary, because they don't teach 8 classes, so it's how it's calculated, based on what they actually teach.
I guess I'd be curious
So-
to see the math on that,
Yeah,
because.
it's right in the contract how it's calculated.
Could we
So
get-
it's based on the teacher's salary, so you'd have to look at
I know that,
whatever the teacher in
but-
that position was.
With the permission of the chair, could we get a sample, or, I would like to see a sample of that, if a teacher at the high school taught 1 or 2 blocks.
I can give you a real life one. That
Um,
cost us a fortune to
Yeah,
get a sub in to do a class.
yeah.
Well,
Because of the healthcare cost alone, I would think.
I mean, well.
Go
I know
ahead, it's
there
on
are-
the topic.
There are tons of out-of-work history professors and English professors who would probably love, they're hired, they're adjuncts. They teach
Yeah.
at colleges and they teach one class and it's a flat fee and.
I mean, the other, I guess I would also like, philosophically, I don't know in a high school, we want to go to an adjunct mode. I mean, the nature of a culture of a high school is that you have teachers who spend time with students. They don't just pop in to teach class and leave. They're available for supports, they're advisors, they work with kids.
You had one last year, a year ago, I'm trying to think, it was a science one, and
Yep.
and the students loved that person.
Well,
They were so sad to see them go.
well, he was a full-time person. Well, he had retired and
Right.
came back and filled a slot. He's the one I was just talking about that we hired to fill in. I can't remember what it was. One class we needed for
But these
a
are-
sub.
I'm just saying, but
and
in
it
challenging
was
times,
almost, it was like
right.
$300 a period
But
to,
if
for him to
you pay
teach.
someone $5,000,
It's-
$10,000.
yeah, that's what I said. I was like,
Can we move on?
yeah, that's what I said.
Question asked and answered.
So it depends on where, but again, I think you have to go, if it happened
580,
occasionally, yeah.
90.
But I don't know philosophically if that's the model you wanna go to in a school. I mean, a high
Certainly
school
not
is a
for core
different.
things. But I mean, I think what we're talking about is like kind of the
2,700,
special,
27,000.
the really unusual courses that would expand the elective offerings.
Yeah.
Is what,
I
is
mean,
what
yeah,
I
I mean, I'm hearing that you're saying that you can't offer a lot of these programs, and maybe it's time to think not so much what's been done traditionally, and you know what? when students go to college or technical school, sometimes they don't have all those relationships. And it's an adjunct person who's teaching it, who might work during the day and then teaches a class at night, and they're talking online, and I just think it's a different world.
I can get you, I'll try to for Thursday, some sample of what that cost is.
Yeah.
I've got 3 people in line. I'm one of them, so I'm going to take my shot. I have heard that the special ed, I'm getting back to special ed, and the programs that we are developing and developed that are bringing kids back into district might be available for us to, I'm going to use the word rent, but not really rent. Is there more of that, and what kind of revenue do we get? And I guess we can only charge what it costs us.
Right.
And we can include the overhead as well, portion of the building, portion of the...
You have your choice. You can charge your regular ed tuition, your regular tuition rate, or you can charge a special ed tuition rate, which may include specific services. So if a student needs like a one-to-one aid, you can't charge a regular ed tuition rate plus the one-to-one aid cost. You can charge either special ed, and this is special ed law, you can either charge special ed costs or a regular ed rate.
And do we have some, without getting into specifics, what is going on right now, and is there anything in the budget for next year?
We have, for preschool, we used to tuition kids in, Dunbarton or New Boston, we had availability. One of the changes in the special ed law in New Hampshire was capped our classes at 12, which virtually eliminated our ability to do that without adding additional classes. We actually had to add a class of preschool to be able to keep our classes at 12. We do tuition in regular ed students because, again, in preschool, it's an integrated program, so it's 50% regular ed, 50% special ed. We do tuition kids in, so they pay to do that. We, at this point, have not opened up our programs to other students. And again, there's pros and cons to that. The pros is there's a revenue stream. The con is these are our most difficult kids to manage. Goffstown School District doesn't necessarily want to own or be responsible for somebody else's most difficult child. So there's, there's a trade-off for some revenue. And so we have not gone there yet. If Dunbarton or New Boston had a student at the elementary level, we would certainly entertain that. We haven't gotten to that point. They've been able to manage them within their own programs and own systems. But again, these are really oftentimes very difficult kids to work with. Their programs designed to have 2 or 3 staff members for 3 or 4 students. Do we really want Manchester's most difficult child that we have to now own and take care of and take away from our program? So,
Right.
yeah.
Phil? It's about 9:22, so we have, about 6-7 minutes of questions to get to our 9:30.
Oh, I'll gladly use that up.
We'll give you about 3.
Hey,
We'll give
you
about
had the
3
first
minutes.
half hour. I'm gonna take the last 6 minutes.
If you start now, you get more.
For 6 minutes, hold on, and then I won't have to answer more questions.
It's called sharing, huh?
No, I guess I'm looking at Mountain View Middle School and looking at the
204.
general supplies.
611.
It is 611.
Function,
Well,
1100.
1100, but
611.
depending on which one you look at, subset 02, 06, or 08, or
All of them.
Yeah.
Put them all
Right.
together, because we did, those are the,
They're
those are the
broken out.
programs.
Right.
And I didn't segregate out the programs because we didn't get it in the spreadsheet, we only got it on paper.
Right.
So I'd combine them.
That's fine.
A lot of them.
The question I have is, one, I'm looking at the descriptions.
Page
and-
148.
Well, 147, 148. On one section, again, I love the descriptions, I love the explanations, it helps a lot. However, the number of students fluctuates all over the place. You got total cost for 622 students under the
Art supplies?
art supplies, and then under the foreign languages, I mean, I understand you're not having the full number of class kids taking it, but then you have under the Mountain View, the math supplies, you have 195 students in the 5th grade and 6th grade, and then you have 225 in the 7th and 8th grade. And I don't believe that my thought is that those aren't the actual numbers of students.
Yes, well, so 5th and 6th grade, remember, is only Goffstown, so our numbers are smaller.
Yeah.
7th and 8th grade includes Dunbarton and New Boston, so those are numbers. When you look at the, like the family and consumer science or tech ed, because they rotate, we can actually calculate every 7th grader takes tech ed, so we actually know how many 7th graders take tech ed. So they rotate throughout 7th and 8th grade, they take one course, within a 2-year period. So we can actually calculate the exact number of students based on our projected count. So
Well, no,
that is
I
actual.
think you can, and I agree, but if my recollection is correct, I believe our current 6th grade is the smallest class in Goffstown it's kind of that lull in the whole group, and then I'm just surprised that it's gonna equal the same size 8th grade next year, when we know that the current 7th grade is bigger than the current 6th grade.
Right, but I would also, I'd have to look at the numbers, but Dunbar and New Boston could be sending over a larger class.
Yeah, I guess I don't.
Would enrollment numbers help you?
Yeah, I guess enrollment numbers per class would be helpful.
We can give you by grade.
Yeah.
Enrollment numbers by grade.
Right, that's fine,
I have
by
the
grade.
number here.
Yeah,
Somewhere in my file of data.
and I guess if I may, in that same line, I have a follow-up question.
That might be the only one, and yeah, you are taking the last 6 minutes. Go.
Well, it's only one, 2 questions. In the description, we have whiteboard replacements in the general supplies. Is that the appropriate location for those?
Whiteboard?
Whiteboard, not smartboard.
In general supplies.
Under general supplies, wouldn't that be under furniture replacement?
I think it's cost, though, the per unit cost might drive where that was placed in the budget.
I see 2 of them in here at $425. It's not a big dollar number. I guess I've been a kind of a stickler where things end up in the right code line so you can find where to me, that wouldn't be general supplies, that would have been a replacement. Just a shifting.
Depends on what the threshold is of the cost.
There shouldn't be any threshold for general replacement. It's not a general supply.
Well, you know
A
what we can
whiteboard's not a
do-
general supply.
Well, anyway, what we can do from the question and answer, just for the committee, we can adopt to reduce it out of here and add it into another number as a motion.
Sure. I
Okay.
guess that's.
That would be the outcome from the question and answer.
But I guess
period.
that at least, is that how you used, was there a threshold that you used for replacement of stuff like that?
Right.
Like a Stacy Ray, whoever?
I'm looking at enrollment numbers.
No, there was nothing definite
Okay,
in the way of a dollar value.
okay.
We just didn't consider it.
You defer to his
equipment.
question. I'm asking.
Okay, no, that's fine.
He's so
Sure,
excited
sure, I just-
about asking his question.
So Phil, just on enrollment, we're projecting at Mountain View for 5th grade, 170 students, 6th grade, 186 students, 7th grade, 244 students, that's, 7th grade, that's, made up of 148 students from current 6th grade, 27 students from Dunbar, and 69 students from New Boston. And 8th grade at 287 students
That's what you're projecting for
for
next year? Then you're lacking in some of your supplies.
No, because not all the students take all. So
All
like,
courses.
so when you look at math, some kids would take algebra instead of math, so.
You guys, okay, going over a little bit to get these last 2 questions out?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Scott?
Stacy, during your Saturday presentation, one of the requests was for an administrator at Mountain View Middle School, and it was to, I guess, replace the one that was cut last year. And looking at the enrollment numbers for Mountain View Middle School, it's around 900. In not so distant past, it was at 1,000, 1,100. So the numbers have gone down significantly. You currently have 4 administrators, and I guess, can you give me the business case as to why? You said that the administration is not able to do teacher performance evaluations, things of that nature, and having had experience with students in the school over the last several years, is it a reflection of not having the time because the administration is doing other activities maybe that are not principal worthy? And I'll just be very pointed in my questioning. When the administration spends a lot of time for bus duty, both before and after school and a lot of cafeteria duty, is that a worthwhile expense where that principal or assistant principal could be doing teacher evaluations and someone who makes $10 an hour could be shuffling around in the parking lot? I'm not particularly sold on it, but maybe you can help sell me on it.
So I will add that all of our administrators are in all of our cafeterias, always at recess, always at bus time. That's when our biggest issues happen, you go to the high school, Frank is always in the cafeteria during lunchtime, so that's not a unique middle school feature. We did not cut the middle school, it was the special ed facilitator. We did not fill it when we had to make the retirement cuts. So when we had to meet that $622,000, that was one of the positions we did not fill. And that was one of the opportunities we had. This committee had brought up several times that we could cut an administrator at the middle school. So it kind of gave us an opportunity to do that and see how it worked. And so we have done that. What we are finding with the roles that we have, the roles work. So we went to, instead of having 2 assistant principals, we went to 1 assistant principal and a dean of students. One of the things we've consistently heard is the lack of continuity in discipline, that we had multiple administrators doing discipline. So we moved to a dean of students position, 1 person doing discipline. When what we found, we have the curriculum coordinator who does curriculum. That is her main focus and her main job, is to ensure that teachers are following curriculum, teachers are trained, that teachers know what they're supposed to be teaching, and that she gets into classrooms to make sure they're teaching what they need to be teaching. That's especially now that we've adopted a new reading program, it's important for somebody to get in there and make sure those teachers are teaching the program with fidelity. The position we cut or reduced was the special ed coordinator's position or facilitator's position. At last count, we have almost 200 identified students in that school who need services. The responsibility of that role is to attend the role of that person is to attend every special education meeting. What we are doing now is Jen Gillis, who's the assistant principal, is filling both roles. And what we're finding is that she's not able to be in 12 places at one time. So there's times where she needs to be at a special ed meeting, where there's also the administrators meeting with the team to talk about curriculum and instruction and what's happening in the classroom. She also needs to be in a classroom to do an evaluation. And so we're finding it's just an impossible feat for 1 person to fill both of those roles, which is why we're asking for it to come back.
Is there a metric that's used by superintendents with respect to administrators per pupil? And I say that because we know we have 1 administrator for Glen Lake, we have 2 for Maple Avenue with 476 students. And if we were to have 5 at Mountain View, you'd be probably on 180 students per administrator. Is there a metric that's used?
The state law requires a principal, and they require an assistant principal for every 500 students. So you need somebody to coordinate special ed. That would be a given with the number of students, the needs of students. You need somebody managing. Special ed without the proper controls over special ed, could be your worst nightmare, because you're either going to have exorbitant costs because you're not going to have somebody overseeing it to contain the costs, or you're going to run into lawsuits because you're not providing appropriate services.
If I could, I'm good with that explanation in the sense that, I have no doubt in my mind with over 200 coded students, a special ed person, administrator is required there, or is needed there. I guess my question is, do you need then, 4 other people, a principal and 3 other administrators why wouldn't it work with the ratio that you have now?
Right. And I think what we've done is identified that it doesn't work, because having that 1 less administrator, it isn't working.
But does the metric, if I think there are, last I remember, there were metrics in which, I thought it was 2 to 250 students, it seemed like, per administrator. So when I looked at that, this is going back from my years, then I'm like, wow, why would they need a 5th when 4 should be good for 900 students in a building? That's where I'm kind of.
I mean, I could certainly look to see, but it's not, I mean, other than state law, which requires, like I said, one principal and then an assistant principal for every 500 students after that.
I mean, I look at, look at Bartlett School, I mean, David is the only administrator there, correct?
And then we have a special ed facilitator.
Facilitator.
Yep. Not full-time.
Right. I'm good.
Good.
I can wait till next time, they're
And I
coming
think,
back, right?
so yeah, we'll be back.
We'll be back on
Somebody will be available for us on Thursday?
Yep, we'll be between here and the planning board meeting.
Okay. And they're just right across the way. Cool. All right then, we meet back here again Thursday. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Elizabeth, seconded by
I'll second it.
Richard. Those in favor signify by raising your hand, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. We are adjourned.